Okay, go ahead.
All right, we will begin this regular board meeting of the West Linn-Wilsonville School District here. It's occurring through virtual media and Zoom tonight. But Ms. Douglas, if you would please, could you take roll?
Regan Molitor.
Present.
Chelsea King.
Here.
Christy Thompson.
Here.
Dylan Hides.
Here.
Ginger Fitch.
Here.
Thank you.
Thank you. The first item, this meeting tonight is a little bit kind of different than normal. We decided we would we'd continue with our usual recognitions, which Chelsea and I will present here shortly. But then we also kind of wanted to forego our usual board reports. Usually we describe what we've been doing in and around the school district, but being as we've been largely relegated to stay home, there isn't as much typically to report, and we wanted to give a little additional time for our superintendent to deliver her report and then have the board have the ability to ask questions or share wonderings about what our superintendent shares. So our first item on the agenda is recognitions, and Chelsea and I just wanted to kind of share, the board's appreciation for all the work that's been taking place, even if we don't have our students in the buildings. Some of that work with regards to our staff was we had people who volunteered to work in our schools once the closures were announced and we emptied our building, to come in and thoroughly clean our facilities. And then we also had people who made themselves available to make and prepare both breakfast and lunch, as well as hand those out to our students. And we received the information about the volume of that. Last week we ended with almost, it looked like 3,000 meals being handed out at over 9 school sites. And we've had staff who's been making sure that happens, that those meals get into the hands of our students, as well as under special circumstances, if a family's not able to get to one of those sites, ensuring that we get them the meals that they need. We've also had the ability to start kind of a survey process about who has devices in their homes and who might need a device. And we've had staff diligently reaching out to all of our families and making sure that we're aware of what they would need to have learning at home take place. And then we had staff prepare and clean Chrome notebooks, as well as be available to distribute those at our schools. We've also had our nursing and counseling teams reaching out to families and making sure that they have what they need at home that they may otherwise obtain at school, to ensure that their children can be as happy and healthy as possible when they're not in our schools. And we've also had, and I hate to list this off because I'm almost certain I'm going to forget someone, but we definitely have had our administration and staff available working nonstop, originally just thinking that we were going to be out of school for a week and then spring break and then return. And then that was extended. And so then they got busy trying to think about, well, what can we do during that first extension, and preparing some supplemental education and going through and combing through websites and just trying to put something that's grade level appropriate together to get out to our families for people who wanted to engage in self-learning at home. And then that has now since transferred into distance learning, and trying to gather up that information to figure out how do we deliver our curriculum to our students through new methodologies that don't involve students in the classrooms themselves. And so we've had administrative staff as well as our teachers taking on these Herculean efforts to make sure that our students are going to be okay and that they're going to receive what they need, whether it be educational materials, foods, Chromebooks, and the like, during this unprecedented time. And so the board just wants to acknowledge our staff who's participated in those processes and that have been making this okay for our students and families, and say thank you very much. And Chelsea, would you like to acknowledge our community?
Yeah, just a good opportunity to really demonstrate how interconnected we are and what a team we are, and really manage a lot of uncertainty and ambiguity. So we've relied on our community partners, whether that be neighbors, sharing resources or checking in on each other, community partners like the Oregon Food Bank, that's keeping our local food banks stocked for our families. Those are, big and small gestures that make this uncertain time manageable. And our parents, we're asking a lot of our parents as well to navigate their work if they still have it, their economic stress if they don't still have it, and to do that with their students at home, and now to also read the emails, organize the curriculum or the approach, set up the kiddos for workstations and help them structure their learning environments, and manage their own stress and anxiety, and behave like a good student, and in the corner of the living room or wherever that is. And so we've asked a lot of our parents to really step up and be a really strong partner as well. And they are. Our neighbors are showing up, our community partners are showing up, and our parents are showing up. So we're all acting as a team, and it will take all of us to get through on the other side stronger. So just appreciating that.
Thank you, Chelsea. And next up is our superintendent report, and Dr. Ludwig.
Thank you, and thank you everyone for your patience as we also navigate the tools of Zoom meeting here. Going to bring up, I think, we can share a document here. Hope everyone can see. Okay. Did that come through on everybody's screen? Superintendent report, I'm getting thumbs up. Okay, great. If you're seeing it at home, I'm assuming that your screens, that those visiting our board meeting tonight are also able to see it. I just want to thank the Chair Molitor and Vice Chair King for a comprehensive and thoughtful recognition. You almost gave my whole superintendent report, just touching on all the aspects of what we've been doing, and I'll go through that. But I think this first slide just kind of shows, the connection that we want to have with kids and families, and I think that car with the sign, "We miss you this much," is just an indication of how relational our work is. And when we can't be in proximity, we find creative ways to do that and still be safe. But how much we do care about each other, and how much we know our community cares about our teachers and staff, and how much we care about our kids. All the way to that next picture, which just shows this is now business as usual. It's a lot of Zoom meetings and trying to conduct business virtually, which takes more time, and it's a challenge. We're grateful to technology, and yet it also just slows things up in some ways when every conversation has to be scheduled. And this is actually a picture of a few of us having a meeting with Three Rivers Charter School and making sure that they have what they need to keep up and going, and that they have their questions answered. They're a part of our school district. And we need to make sure that they feel connected and have the information, and that we can share any strategies that we're using with them, because we share all of our families together. So this kind of virtual way of doing business, we're grateful for technology, but just do want to communicate that it just takes much more time, we're realizing, to get back to people, to get questions answered. and to kind of do business in a school district. I'll just touch on these items tonight. So this is kind of the agenda, just making sure you get an update on these various aspects of as much as I can share with you that we know to this point. As Chair Molitor mentioned, one of the first things we had up and going was making sure that kids still were getting fed. That was our #1 priority. They're safe at home and making sure they had meals if they needed them. And it didn't take long for our nutrition staff to get that up and rolling. They're an exceptional group of professionals. And I want to recognize Lindsay Flores, our Director of Nutrition Services, and how quickly and capably she rallied her team and organized quite an endeavor that she makes it look easy. But let me tell you, there were a lot of details. And by the end of that first week, we got close to the number that we believe we're going to have most weeks, which is about 3,000. We did notice today, though, since we started giving supplemental learning packets, that meals went up. So I think as folks are there picking up some learning packets, they also see a meal that they can pick up, and all of that is completely fine. And so we might see those numbers go up as folks find that they can get 2 things in one trip. We are using safety protocols. There's quite a bit of guidance from Department of Education and Nutrition Services in Salem around how to make sure meal delivery keeps folks in distance and is sanitized, and our staff is working diligently through that. We now have curbside pickup for meals at all of our primary schools as well as Westland High School. We do believe with this model that we will have sufficient commodities for the remainder of the year. Additionally, state agencies in Salem are looking for other commodity distributors who can provide for those kinds of products that districts might become low in, whether it's brown paper bags or different food sources. And so the state recognizes that this is a different way of providing meals and is there to support school districts. And we will receive reimbursement from the state, have been assured that this type of meal delivery will still fall under the category of school nutrition program. One of the other provisions in the executive order by the governor was alongside meal provision is emergency childcare provision for those individuals who are considered essential staff and work in healthcare industry or first responders or gas station attendants, grocery clerks, those who are running stores that are considered essential to stay open. A lot of those are our families, and they're going to work every day still, taking care of our needs. And we need to make sure that there's childcare for them because their kids are not in school. And so each school district is asked to be available for free childcare provision for essential workers. And that screenshot on this slideshow is just the cover of a in-depth guidebook put together by the State Department around how to provide that emergency childcare for school districts. So it outlines how to prepare the facility, how to make sure that the staff stay safe, what are the essentials for children, how to kind of set up a possible typical day, the registration, the in and out protocols to make sure everybody stays safe and has those safe social distancing guidelines in place, and that meals are provided during that time. So at this time, the only child care we have up and running is run by Club K at Boone's Ferry. We just let them retain that part of our building. They are running it with aligned to these same guidelines very safely. I've seen their protocols, and that is up and running, and they are providing that service. But in addition to that, we will prepare 2 of our primary schools in case we do get the call from Clackamas County Public Health or the Early Learning Division that we need to make more locations available. It doesn't necessarily mean it's families who live in our school district. It could be families who serve somewhere in this area but live elsewhere and need to drop off their children more closer to their place of work. We do have a hospital nearby, and it could be that one of our schools is a good location for that. So right now we're in the process of taking a look at the facility application and making sure we're able to meet all the conditions and get ready. And then we'll let the folks know at the Early Childhood Learning Division that we're up and ready to go. As you mentioned, Chair Molitor, our engineer and custodial staff have been busy ever since we shut the doors on March 13th, sanitizing all of our facilities, making sure only authorized personnel go in so that we don't have to re-clean all areas, but can keep track of those areas that need to be re-sanitized. Once we discovered that we were moving to an extended school closure, we did have requests then from teachers to retrieve more curriculum materials from their rooms and things that they had left behind, knowing that they would need access to more items. So we did create a retrieval process, which allows them to come into the building at certain times, just go straight to their classroom, retrieve items, and then we do designate with signage all of those rooms or areas where a staff member has been, so we know to re-clean those spaces. We do believe, however, if this extends longer and we get to either reopen end of May or June, we're not sure, but there could be a point where we just decide to re-clean all of the entire facility again. And in doing that, we can also attend to some of the maintenance kinds of things that are small maintenance projects while we're doing that. So we're taking a look at if this is an extended closure, even beyond what's in place now, how to couple cleaning alongside some work we could do in the buildings if we know that children aren't going to come back in the buildings. You talked about Chromebook distribution, and I want to first of all recognize and thank our amazing Chief Officer of Information and Technology Services, Curtis Nelson. And really the orchestration and first planning came from him around how could this even be possible with curbside distribution, social distancing, sanitizing of Chromebooks, delivery to parents, checkout system. And he really was the one who put those plans in place and then reviewed those plans with a lot of other individuals, adjusting as we went along. And what you saw that looked so seamless took hours and hours and days of planning to kick it off. I was at Lowry the morning of that distribution for the morning, and when I looked at the wires that were hanging from inside the building to a pole, down to another pole, out to the tent so that we could have Wi-Fi service and check out Chromebooks right up at a curb, it was pretty phenomenal. So a lot of folks making that happen, and a lot of folks offering to be there. We were not short on staff, so that was great. And to date, we have given out 2,672 laptops. What we're discovering now is that the Herculean task of distribution is complete, but now there's the Herculean task of IT service to all those families and homes. And we get about 50 help tickets processed just last week, but I think there were probably double that in one day today. So as folks are trying to get into Google Classroom and they're opening their Chromebooks and they have a question about why something isn't working or how to navigate, they're sending in their questions through our help ticket, which is great. I would just appeal to our community to be patient. Maybe see if your kids could answer the question first, because sometimes they can, and that our staff will get to those questions as soon as we can. But we're realizing now that we've become kind of the Q&A for all things technology to everybody's home. So we're working as hard as we can, and that includes staff and students and families. So we're working really hard to get everyone set up and going. So I just wanted to share, there's been some questions around what happens during this period of closure if families move. And one of the strong guidances from not only Governor Brown, but also Colt Gill, the Deputy Superintendent of Education, is even though schools are closed, we need to make sure that we serve our children. And while in Oregon, we've all gone to distance learning, a family that moves within our state could still essentially stay enrolled in their current school, connected to the teacher that knows them, and continue to learn online or virtually with that teacher, and that they may only need our school district for meals or maybe childcare service, but that essentially they could continue with an uninterrupted, so to speak, connection virtually with their past school district. So we're encouraging families who might be in that situation, there's just a few, to see if they could do that, since schools are all really closed essentially right now. If they can continue with their school district, with their learning, the teacher who knows them right now, that may be the best way to continue their education. If for some reason they're not able to do that, of course, we'll do a modified type of enrollment, mainly just to get them connected to some learning to finish out the year, understanding that their teacher in our district won't be able to provide an assessment or get to know where they are with some learning, but really will be doing some more supplemental learning for them. We do have a couple families that have moved in from out of state, and whether they feel they can continue with that state's distance learning or need to connect into ours, we're giving them an access to do that. Even while we're closed, all of that is being run through our district office since our school offices are closed. Making sure that they have access to some supplemental learning, that they have access to a Chromebook if they need one, and meals. We've been asked about attendance. How do we know if kids are attending school or not? And how do we record attendance during this time? And the guidance from the state has been, we need to connect with all of our families and all of our students with the first and most important priority to make sure that they are connecting to the learning that's available to them, that they're engaged during this time, that they're able to access either the paper packets or the online learning, that there isn't some sort of a barrier for them to be able to access their learning. But in terms of accounting that's related to attendance and recording that in our system, that has been waived for the remainder of the school year by the state. So we're not asking students every day to log in as present or not present and keep track of that ADMW of attendance during this time. The priority has been connect with students as teachers and as staff to make sure that they're okay, if they're getting meals that they need to, and if they're able to access their learning. As we're thinking about budget, and we know we'll have a topic about that, it's been very clear in many messages from the Department of Education at ODE that they are going to do everything they can to keep the current budget intact, and that as we look at next year, that the priority is to prioritize that state school fund and those funds that already account for staff who are in our schools currently. So state school fund, Measure 98, prioritize nutrition services, high cost disability fund. But we know that there are some grants that are projected to come to us in the fall through the Student Success Act. And there has been recommendation that we just hold on that for now until the state can see the economic impact and we see the revenue that might come from the corporate activities tax and see how much is available to either fully fund that grant or partially fund, or perhaps even redirect any or part of that fund to the state school fund. So those are unknowns, a lot of conversation at the state level, but I just wanted you to know that folks are thinking about it, and these are topics of conversation weekly that we're watching for and looking for. There's also been consideration that if schools do close for the remainder of the school year, as soon as school districts can know that information, it may be helpful to some who could have some contracts that they might wish to suspend or close out early in the hopes of then maybe gaining some savings. So instead of paying for a contract for the remainder of the year, closing it out early to recoup that savings. There's also some conversation about some collective or collaborative statewide actions. Perhaps since we're all in this together, there's a way to leverage some discounts or to take a look at healthcare insurance and see what kind of provisions or savings could be there for school districts. Right now, a lot of that is just speculation and wonder, but I just wanted to assure you that there's many at the state level and leadership level that are beginning those conversations. And as a board, you might be hearing some of those topics through OSBA, and if not, those could be questions that you could also ask as board members to see what OSBA is thinking about or how they're involved. Of course, communication at this time is critical, and I want you to know that it's a priority for us. As soon as we get information and we know it's accurate information and it's information that has been vetted and can be then delivered to our community and it's thoughtful, we're getting that out as soon as we can. You're probably seeing a tiered level of communication, several that came from me at the superintendent level that were then applicable to all staff or the community. Then another tier where schools reached out in alignment to those same talking points. And now that we're into this extended closure, we've asked teachers to begin to develop their communication formats to their students. In addition, our communication director, Mr. Andrew Kielstrom, has been vigilant, and this really has been 24/7 work on his part and throughout the weekends as well, making sure that we're receiving all the updates from the Oregon Health Authority, from the CDC, making sure our website stays updated, checking Facebook, responding to questions from the community, to media, and to patrons. And then discovering ways that we can virtually, have internal communication through Zoom meetings and emails, and making sure that we're continuing with the business that we need to. I am drafting a distance learning communication guide that will go out to staff this week, outlining just the precautions too when you're in this place of virtual communication, the modes in which we believe it is safe and appropriate and also equitable for all families, and those avenues of communication that, even though technology may allow us to have them, may not be what we choose to do in our school district. We have a priority towards equity and access, and we want to make sure we stay within guidelines around safety and privacy. And so how we open up various portals for communication need to be thoughtful, and we're working with legal counsel on that, as well as our team of leaders. So that's my report. It again just echoed a lot of what Chair Molitor mentioned, and just want you to know that just incredibly grateful to have a supportive and engaged board. And thank you for your questions throughout all of this, and staying connected. So if there's any questions, we'll take those. I know we've got a full agenda, and some of them might be answered in some of the upcoming topics, but we can go ahead and start.
So Dr. Ludwig, I noticed we've got a couple of board members who have questions, and do feel free that if a question might overlap with a later presentation, to ask a board member to, either hold their question or ask it again. Dylan, let's start with you.
All right, thank you. Dr. Ludwig, I'm curious why we're sanitizing the schools if we're being told that the virus can remain active for 72 hours on a hard surface. I'm worried, are we putting the janitorial staff in risk when we could just allow these things to become inactive just by functions of the schools not being entered for 6-7 weeks?
Yeah, so I'll just clarify what I meant by that. What we did when schools first closed is we just went ahead and did a deep cleaning, not knowing, if any of our staff could have been asymptomatic or had the symptoms, but just going ahead and doing a deep clean with all of the precautions that our cleaning staff needed to take, knowing then that after that closure date, we then had clean schools, sanitized schools. And then we closed them off. As we discovered through the extended closure that people now needed to enter the building to recover items, that then gives the potential again for any space to be occupied by someone that that could have symptoms, either to someone else later on who comes in that space. And so we decided to let folks re-enter, but then mark and tag those places that would need to be sanitized again later. From what we know, there is some varying expertise on how long the virus lingers on certain surfaces. And then there's also just the good faith effort of, if when children come back, have we done our job in actually, in having as clean a possible school environment for them. So we could just let nature kind of desanitize, but because we have folks going in and out, there's always that risk of a question being raised about how sanitized it really is, because folks saw adults going in and out, whether it was nutrition personnel or IT personnel or staff retrieving items. So during this time, we're marking those spaces and watching them carefully. But before students come back in, we'll do another thorough re-cleaning, just to be on the safe side. Yeah.
And I know that Washington State today announced that they're not going to be returning to school this year. Have you heard anything about when we might expect a similar announcement, either we're opening or not opening, from the governor?
I've not. We've not heard anything about that yet. The strongest inclination we got in terms of just preparing as schools was in the message that I shared, where Colt Gill did say there's a strong possibility that we may not return to school. And that was then the shift from supplemental learning to distance learning for all.
Okay.
We still have the executive order that's standing from the governor that says April 28th.
Okay.
And while we know that stands, the way we're planning in our school district is putting a system in place that could take us all the way through June.
Okay. And then my last question related to that is, I haven't heard anything, but I assume there are talks about what to do with graduating seniors and how they're going to complete their graduation requirements now. Can you just let me know that something is happening, that conversations are being had on that point?
Yeah. We do want to make sure our seniors are celebrated. And we know that they're a group that have given up a lot this year. And we know everyone's given up the way that they thought they were going to end a school year. That's true for kindergartners all the way through seniors. But there is something significant about that senior year. And there were a lot of special end of the year traditions and ceremonies, and they certainly deserve to have a ceremony. We don't have the specifics yet, but we are talking internally about how we might do that. And we'll do that in a way that engages student opinion. And most schools have what's called the graduation committee. Christy, I think you were on one probably at one point. Parents who put a lot of effort and time into thinking about and planning for some ceremonies. So very likely we'll engage some parents in some possibilities as well as students, and then put something together. Their states are doing a number of different things. Some are just celebrating in August, putting something together for that they know more likely may not have social distancing kind of restraints. Others are thinking about virtual celebrations. So we'll come up with something, but we do want to assure our community that we will have a recognition.
Well, and beyond celebrations, though, is what about students that I guess are going to have trouble completing the requirements to qualify? I mean, is the governor thinking about lessening the requirements to complete the 12th grade high school certificate?
So I will talk about that during the distance learning portion.
Perfect.
And then also let you know that there is some news that's going to be coming out tomorrow. It's embargoed at this time.
Okay, thank you.
Sorry, Ginger.
Thank you, Dr. Ludwig, for everything that your staff and you are doing. I had, my first question is regarding the lunches. If this is extended over past April 28th and maybe up till April 28th even, as families are out of work and we have increased financial need, how is the district planning to address perhaps a greater need for meals to be going out and a greater number of meals? And is there any consideration at the state or federal level to making sure you're paid for that? That's the first question.
Yeah, it's been very clear at the state level that meals are a priority and that whatever reimbursement is needed to districts will be there. So we're not worried about the finances, and we believe that will come. We do believe we have enough access to commodity from our vendors, and the model of delivery that we have, that it will sustain us through June, and we'll make it through the school year. And there are some school districts that indicated their vendors are having a shortage. And so the state has moved in to contact other vendors to help those districts out. And we are hearing that there's becoming increasing flexibility to do that, and that meals is a priority at the state level. And so several communications recently have come assuring school districts that they will receive whatever support necessary to make sure the commodities are there. Thank you for that question. I appreciate it.
Thank you. And I was impressed how quickly that was up and running, and appreciate the leadership among the nutrition services staff. The second was, you had talked a lot about foggers. I'm using the word foggers as the tool you had available for cleaning. Is that what we've been using for disinfecting, or does it not meet the criteria?
So I can see that our Chief of Operations, Pat McGuff, is in our panelist section, and I'm going to turn it over to him. Before I do that, I want to recognize that this is one more member of our team who has been magnanimous through all of this. And just 1 month on the job, Mr. McGuff?
Yeah, this is not the start that I was looking for.
But I will tell you, if there was ever a time to select the best, most qualified chief of operations for our district, I go to sleep every night grateful for this gentleman, and how he has just stepped in this unprecedented time, but without missing a beat, and is ahead of most of the thinking already. And I'm just so grateful for his leadership and how he has not only thought of everything and coordinated his staff, but also done it in a way that is compassionate and caring. We have staff who are in the high risk category, who are staying home, and their needs are being met. And Mr. McGuff is very careful to continually communicate that while we certainly could use our staff support with cleaning and facility, that their first priority is their health and well-being. And so I do want to assure you that every action being taken is done by staff who feel that they can come in and do what's required of them, that there is social distancing going on and safety and precautions being taken. So Pat, do you want to talk about the cleaning methods that you're using?
Yeah, I'll just hit on a few things. In regard to the foggers, they are effective, and we can do spaces quickly. Right at the moment, though, there is a limitation on the product that goes in them. Since we had the time, we chose to do everything by our chemicals that we had on hand that are in mixing blending stations in the school that we physically spray on and wipe down. We're reserving the we were to return to school and disinfect an area quickly. Those would be during that time. So we tried to hold those in reserve while knowing that we had to clean the schools. We had time. And so that's how we chose to do them now. But they are effective. They have strength up to hospital grade strength, and that's what we've been using.
Thank you. The last question I just had is, I'm assuming you're beginning to identify contracts that could be suspended if this extends into the next year. And I'm just wondering which department is responsible at the district level for identifying those.
Are you still talking about the cleaning of buildings, or are you talking now about just contracts in general? And we do have that topic up next after our SIA approval grant to talk about how COVID-19 and the closure is impacting bond contracts and contracts in the district. So are you okay with waiting with that question until that topic?
Yes. Yes.
All right. So for any viewer watching, that question from Director Fitch will be answered when we get to the part of the agenda that is listed as number 8, letter B, bond projects timeline and impact due to COVID-19.
And Dr. Ludwig, I had a question, and it might just be that we need to wait and see, but you were talking about budgeting for next year and the federal stimulus package, and I've seen information indicating that monies for education are part of that package and that Oregon is going to receive some portion of that. Do you have a timeline on guidance as to, what, K-12 education might see of that? And if so, if it's in meaningful amounts?
That's a great question. Thank you. We don't have that yet. I believe it'll come in the next few weeks, and perhaps by our board meeting, it will consume much of our conversation. We do know that I think you're talking about the $1 trillion, $2.2 trillion package from the federal government. It will get allocated between states, and then within states, there are a number of categories in terms of how much goes to healthcare, how much goes towards education, how much goes towards stimulus for small businesses. Increasingly, I'm hearing about more of those categories. And I think that's the frenetic work likely right now at the state level, is to take a look at that and then to figure out not just the distribution allocation amount, but then the guidelines for how to proceed with that, so that there's direction accompanying any figures. And there will be some towards K-12 schools, we do know that. How it will be distributed is still an unknown at this point, and the amounts per district, and whether there'll be criteria to go along with that, or whether it will just be allocated to the state school fund. We'll see.
Chelsea?
I thank you so much. It's really remarkable how steep the learning curve is in figuring out how to move an entire curriculum and way of instruction online, and how to do it during a pandemic. It's not the same as a giant earthquake and all those other things that we were prepared for. It's just got a different way of approaching it, that things that I don't even think of sometimes, like, why can't we send a support specialist into someone's home to help them? Like, oh yeah, they can't, because you have to honor physical distancing, and so all those things have to be thought through. I even think about things like Zoom and the technology and the security issues that have come up with it, that I think most of us didn't anticipate when we first started launching ourselves enthusiastically into Zoom meetings, and then they started to get hacked. And so a lot of unknowns as we move through this, and I appreciate your thoughtful and careful movement. I do have a couple questions about distance learning and grading and assessment, and I think it's best left for later in the evening because we're going to talk about it again then. Is it correct?
Correct.
All right, I'll wait then. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
All right. So I'm not seeing anybody else on this subject matter. So we will move on to our next agenda item, which is our consent agenda. So is there a motion?
I'll move that the board adopt the consent agenda.
I'll second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded that we adopt our consent agenda, which I will just say consists of a personnel report and board meeting minutes from 3/9, 3/16, and 3/30. 6:30. And it has been moved and seconded. So Kelly, would you please call it for us?
Reagan Molitor,
Yes.
Chelsea King,
Aye.
Christy Thompson,
Aye.
Dylan Hides,
Aye.
Ginger Fitch.
Aye.
Thank you.
All right. We're now at the time of the meeting where we typically would take community input, public comment, and feedback. Just due to our statewide coronavirus restrictions to stay at home and abiding by social distancing, we invited the public to submit their public comments to the board in writing or by email by 4 o'clock today. And shortly before 5, Kelly did share me that we did not receive any public comment for tonight's meeting. That being said, if there are members of the public that do have, reactions to content of this meeting, they of course at any time are always welcome to share their thoughts and input with us. So that being said, we will have no further public comment. And we get to move on to our general board business, and in particular, our student investment account grant application.
Okay, we're going to share screen again here. And you see, oh, board members, are you able to see our lovely, the infographic of the school bus? Okay. I know you're very familiar with this, but we're also cognizant this is a virtual board meeting and there could be visitors who are joining us for the first time and wondering what this topic is about when it says student investment account grant application. And for visitors to our board meeting, just very briefly, last year our legislators passed what's called the Student Success Act, House Bill 3427, through a corporate activity tax that gave an additional $1 billion of investment to schools. In that investment, there was a delineation of how those funds would be allocated to the work of K-12 education. 50% of those funds would be allocated to a special grant called the Student Investment Account, which is what we're going to talk about tonight. The other 50% go towards funding other initiatives in the state and other grants that have to do with early learning, and then some other state education initiatives, for example, nutrition services, work with students with disabilities, and some minority groups. And so if you're curious about that, Oregon Department of Education has a whole website dedicated to the Student Success Act and a lot of information there. So tonight we're going to talk about the student investment account, the process that we're in, and tonight's meeting is to actually approve the grant application that our staff has put together. And each month we gave updates to the school board regarding our process for that, and tonight we now have put our plan together and it's ready for the board to take a look at and to provide their approval. So the way we're going to do this is we're just going to put up the actual document. Board members, you were emailed that plan so you could look at it ahead of time. It's a lot of dense text, but we'll get to the parts that I think are new for us this evening and aren't so much about the process leading up to this. And then there are some additional documents that show elements of the budget within that plan, which you need to take a look at so that when you give your approval this evening, you feel that you know everything that's involved in the plan. So I'm going to open up another tab here. This should look familiar. It is the draft plan that we sent you, and pending your approval tonight, it stays draft, and after that we will submit it to Oregon Department of Education. Three of us are going to share tonight. I have Dr. Josh Flossie, who you've heard from before, who is also in the panel with us tonight. He's the Assistant Director of Student Services. And also Dr. Jennifer Spencer-Imes, our Assistant Superintendent of Student Services. And together they've been a real integral part of the team in helping to put this together. But when I say team, a lot of folks were involved in this, as you know, from both the executive administrators here at the district office to principals to staff and community members. Parts 1 through 4 describe what should be familiar to you as board members, just the process that got us to this plan. And I'm just going to go through, just scroll down, how we engaged the community, how we thought about past input, about what community members, staff, and students believe is important for our school district in meeting the educational needs of students, how we gathered community input through surveys and community forums. This should all look familiar. We've been reporting this to you. How we looked at our data, how we then accounted for the responses and analyzed them, how we talked to partners in the work, who all was engaged in the process of asking the community what is needed in terms of what we're doing well and where we could make improvements, and reminding again our community and the board that there are two main focuses for this grant. One, meeting the mental and behavioral health needs of our students, and improving the academic achievement of students, especially students who have been historically underserved. So those were a lot of the guiding questions to the community, to students, to staff, how we could use the allocation of this grant to better serve our community and meet those two needs. This should all look familiar in terms of how we engaged. Some of this is very redundant. It is a template. Getting at different aspects of the questions. We uploaded quite a few artifacts, even going back to our bond summit conversations we've had with association members, our high school study, everywhere within the last year or last 2 years that we feel is recent enough that gives us information on what we're doing well and where we could make improvements. And to community members who are viewing this meeting, once this plan is approved, it will be posted on the website. Right now, it's considered draft as it goes before the board. And I want to get us to the place that we'll spend most of our conversation tonight, which is part 5. So after we review the data, here we are in the plan, keeping an equity lens through our equity questions. We identified outcomes. We made sure that what we heard from the community aligned with investments that we believed would meet outcomes and what we heard from the community and was allowable within this grant. And then the last survey that we put in front of our community was a very early draft suggesting 7 strategies for the grant allocation that would come to our district. And I don't know how many board members took that survey, but we do know we had quite a bit of community input in response to those 7 strategies. They're listed here and you had a copy of those. After receiving some feedback from the community, we made some slight adjustments, but not many, because most of them came back as high priority and a strong indication to keep these 7 strategies. And so what we'll share with you tonight is how we've taken these 7 strategies and now created the specific investments. In the template of the plan, it's called activities, which is kind of a unique way to describe it. But essentially, taking each strategy and then deepening it to describe personnel that would be hired to fulfill the strategy and how those activities will meet the desired outcomes. So at this point, I'm going to turn the meeting over to Dr. Flossie and Dr. Spencer Imes to talk through the 7 strategies and the activities or investments or personnel that are allocated to those strategies. And Josh and Jennifer, I'm kind of running the PowerPoint, so you just let me know how you want me to proceed down through it. And we'll stop after 3 strategies are shared. We'll stop and then get questions on those 3 from board members. So we'll kind of break it up into 2 parts. The first 3 and then the remaining 4. I hope that format works for you.
Thank you so much, Dr. Ludwig. Thank you for your leadership through this whole process. And I really definitely want to reach out and thank Dr. Flossie too, who has done so much of the work, both in leading and behind the scenes, and collating the data that has come in and formatting this pretty intensive application here. Also really want to thank our amazing building principals and colleagues in the executive leadership team who have facilitated so much of this work, attended community forums, made time to get staff input in each of these components throughout the application and community engagement process. And thank you so much to our community. It is amazing to know when we send out surveys or reach out to focus groups or have forums, we always have people who are so interested and so invested in our schools here in West Linn-Wilsonville, which is what makes this such a rewarding and amazing place to work. So our first investments that we wanted to talk about are related to strategy 1, which is focused on very overtly meeting the students' mental and behavioral health needs by adding some additional specialized and highly trained staff. So our goal here is increasing support for mental and behavioral health, both in increasing support to teams that exist within the schools and to adding additional resources for students and families. And we have been adding in these areas, and we have seen those investments really providing supports and supporting students in some really powerful ways. I'm thinking back to a board meeting or 2 ago when Director Fitch highlighted some of the work that our social worker team has done in providing education and really valuable information for families about a topic that was being raised again and again in our schools. How do we better support our students to have very strong mental health, and how do we work with issues particularly around anxiety? So we've had a number of parent nights that social workers have provided that has really met the needs of families, and they've adjusted based on input and even provided deeper levels of learning for that. That's just one small bit of what those folks do in terms of connecting children that may be in our highest need in our district with higher levels of support. In terms of strategy number 2, which is very focused on reducing the academic disparities and increasing academic achievement for all students. And one of the things we often hear from our community is how much our community values effective class sizes. That we know relationships really matter with students and teachers, being seen, being heard, feeling connected. And you'll see that strategy reflected here, where we are continuing to invest in effective class sizes within our district. But as a district that's focused on equity, we know that it's not only about that, but that we have some other really important parts of those educational teams that need to provide both expertise to support things like English language development for our students who come in with the amazing asset of being emerging bilingual students, but also need support and direct making sure the right kinds of instruction is in place to support their English language acquisition. We know that as we have grown as a district and really supported all students, we need to continue to invest so that our learning specialists, or that's what we call our special education licensed teachers, their caseloads are effective and manageable so that they can spend time co-teaching, co-planning with teachers, and then really providing and problem solving for the individual needs that students have, which is our mission and our calling through special education, to provide a really personalized and individualized approach. And as we have been investing there, we have seen those outcomes moving forward. We're excited to continue to do that with the student investment account. Also want to highlight that para-educators are such an important part of our educational team here, and in Strategy 2, we're also focusing on supporting our para-educator groups that add so much to lots of our students and really help us move that achievement forward in targeted and supported ways for students. So in Strategies 1 and 2, we were really focusing on some high leverage investments we've already been investing in, and how do we maximize those or do more with those. Moving into strategy number 3, this one's a little bit different. This is a new investment for us. We are looking to add social emotional learning coordinators at our primary schools. And one of the things that we have been working on through this process of first developing our continuous improvement plan and then the student investment account application was to really research best practices around supporting students' behavioral and mental health. We engaged with tools from the University of Maryland's Center for School-Based Mental Health and did a self-assessment was one of their tools there that helped us really plan out what do we need, what should be in place in a very strong system that is supporting all students' needs in the area of mental and behavioral health. And part of it was reflected back in Strategy 1, more people that are school psychologists, that are school counselors, that are social workers. Those are an important part of it. But in addition, the University of Maryland's Center for School-Based Mental Health really talks about a tiered approach, that we need to be very proactive around teaching those skills for healthy interaction and healthy social connection, and both the positive thinking skills and the emotional regulation skills. We've been talking about that quite a bit in our schools in the last few years. In that tier 1, we've really invested in things like the Second Steps curriculum at the primary level, and our teachers are really working hard at that. What we discovered in our self-assessment was we had a lot in place in tier 1, and we had a good amount of things in place in tier 3 where students had the highest needs. What we were really missing was a very strong tier 2. So how do we develop that capacity so that things aren't getting to that crisis point, but that we are planning ahead for there are going to be some students who need more than that Second Steps lesson, that need more than that daily community circle that the classroom's already doing. And so we need some folks that can come alongside and do 2 things. One is help build that capacity and systems around what kinds of data are we taking to know that we're moving forward for that, so that we're checking in with students in a more intentional way, that we're building the expertise around restorative practices, collaborative problem solving, trauma-informed practices that help all of our staff move things forward. So we envision these social emotional learning coordinators as building capacity, working directly with students, and helping to implement a better systemic approach. In addition to those coordinators, we have in this investment making sure that we have good assessment tools to check in with students. That's been a question that has come before the board several times. What data are we looking at to know that we're moving forward in supporting students' behavioral and social emotional learning? And we have some tools in place, but we want more tools. And one of the tools that we're looking at adopting is, again, highly validated tool that came out of Harvard called the Panorama set of social emotional learning tools within there of student surveys to assess student learning. So in that strategy, we're contemplating both some people to help coordinate that work, some new assessment tools, and some professional development to make sure that those folks are coming in a way that they have the tools they need to help lead that work. So those are 3 investments that have a lot in them. So I want to pause and see if there are any questions from the board before going forward. Director Molitor, should we move forward?
No, I see some hands being raised. So, but thank you. Christy.
Yeah, I was just curious on the social emotional learning coordinators. It says that we are adding 8, and I know we have 9 primary schools. So is that because we already have one that's maybe been doing it all for all 9 primary schools, and now we're going to put one? So if you could just, I was just curious about that number.
Well, it's a good question, and I understand that question. It's one we've gone back and forth on a few times as we looked at all of this together. You know, one of the challenges, we know that there are certain things that every school needs in terms of their infrastructure, but we also know that a school that has, 625 students may have different needs than a building that has 300 students. So in this investment proposal application, we were envisioning that at our 2 smallest schools, we would be able to find a way to work together on that and not need a full-time person at the 2 smallest schools.
Thank you.
And Chelsea?
I'm so happy to hear about the investment in building the skills for restorative practices and the investment in developing more formalized systems for intentional data collection and reaching that tier 2. So thank you for that. I feel very inspired hearing that. And about the social emotional learning coordinator, I am curious, this role, I mean, they're not a social worker. They're not a learning specialist. What is this? How is this role? What kind of qualifications does this person have? Are they an educator? Or just a little bit more about the background of this type of role.
Yeah, it's a good question and something we've been looking at quite a bit, and we've been researching some different models and as well as different job descriptions and qualifications. And we do know that there's a need for the expertise of someone with the background of a social worker or a school psychologist. And so, as you say, we're looking to increase those investments as well. In this role of the social emotional learning coordinator, our desire was to keep it fairly open in terms of background, but certainly someone who is a licensed educator. But that there are folks that may have come from a number of different backgrounds. They may come from that social worker background. They may come from a learning specialist background that has a lot of expertise around behavior and social emotional learning. They may come from a classroom teacher background who their passion is this part of the work much more so than the academic engagement. And so as we were envisioning this, we thought, well, we could do one of 2 things. We could either more narrowly define the background and skill set and count on that sort of continuity of background being the framework of approaching this in a common way, or we could allow folks to come with some pretty diverse skill sets, but plan that in the summer before they start, we would have a pretty intensive professional development and kind of norming and learning together time where the skills of restorative practices, things like basics around positive behavior supports, trauma-informed practices where we could learn and experience those together, knowing that each person's going to come with different levels of expertise on that already, but knowing that in the end, we want folks that come with that disposition of loving kids and working very collaboratively with their colleagues, that not coming in with the sense of I'm going to fix everything, but I'm here to support this school and we're going to all be in this together with incredible positivity and to be part of a system of other really important folks. We were envisioning that on that week of professional development that we were planning for this group, that on the last day, it would be a day that involves also the school counselor and the social worker and the school psychologist, so we can kind of lay out within this tiered framework where are the different lanes, knowing we're all going to collaborate and work together, but that there was more clarity moving forward.
Christy, did you have anything else? Okay. All right. And then Jennifer, as I turn this back over to you and or Josh, I just wanted to give you guys a quick time check in that we've got about 10 more minutes for this topic.
I'm going to turn it straight over to Dr. Flack.
All right, thank you. And yeah, those first three strategies are the ones that require a little bit more explanation. So I'll try and move through the next strategies 4 through 7 a little faster. So strategy number 4 is about creating an online learning program. And this is a strategy that we've been talking about and planning for quite a while. And the community had expressed that that was something they were interested in. And now we get the opportunity to practice and learn a lot before we move into this strategy. So, the idea of this strategy number 4, we'd be hiring some folks to coordinate the online learning program as well, in addition to curriculum materials and things. Strategy number 5 is about expanding our summer programs at middle schools, as well as making our summer school classes in the high schools free for all students. And this is one of those things that there's a really big emphasis on equity in the Student Success Act, and we felt like we have some great summer programs in the high schools, and students have the opportunity to extend their learning, to earn credits for things that open up times during the school year for them to take more challenging and more interesting classes, and or a greater variety. And but because those summer classes in the past were fee-based, we were looking forward to the opportunity to make those free for all students, providing a broader opportunity. This is something that, when we looked at the data, the feedback from our the different stakeholder groups that we talked to, our Latino parent groups and Latino students who we surveyed, both ranked this as a very high priority, something that was a real value that they were expressing. Strategy number 6 is about increasing time for teacher collaboration. We know that the opportunity for teachers to learn together, to learn with each other in all kinds of ways is really valuable, really high leverage. And so there are several different ways that this would augment the collaborative learning and professional learning funds that are already in our in our general budget, this would augment that by increasing opportunities for things on a district level, like our curriculum camps that we do during the summers. Also on a school level, principal and teacher-led learning. For instance, if a group of teachers wanted to get together in their professional learning community and look at some student data and then visit each other's classrooms to look at their instructional practices, give each other feedback on that, and do a cycle of that kind of learning. This would provide that kind of opportunity. And then another part of this as well, feedback that we heard from our parent community, particularly parents of students served by special education, for students with really complex needs, bringing together a team of the team of specialists. Sometimes we may have a learning specialist and an occupational therapist and a physical therapist and a nurse and a speech pathologist all on the team, and some students may need a lot of additional planning, and so this would also allow for opportunities to bring teams together, for instance, during the summer, to make sure that we've got all of those pieces in place so students can start the school year strong. And then the final strategy, number 7, is about providing additional support for PE and wellness at primary schools, and this is aligned with the requirements from legislation and from the Department of Education about increasing our sort of time for wellness in the primary schools. So those are just kind of quick run through of strategies 4 through 7. So we'll pause for an opportunity for questions about those.
Gosh, that was incredible. I felt really bad kind of putting the time limit on you.
That's right.
It switched to you as speaker, but thank you so much. I know it's so important. So the content of this grant. So thank you. And Chelsea, let's start with you.
Yeah, it's definitely kind of exciting to be at this point after hearing about this grant for so long and all the work that went into gathering the data. And the strategy number 5 has piqued my interest. And I'm just curious about that, the summertime programs. And, I see here, creating and expanding opportunities for our students. So I'm just curious, anything else you can say about what the data showed, about the importance of these, bridging that summer period. And I'm just curious to hear a little more about strategy 5 and what the data told us about the needs that existed for summer learning.
Yeah, so there's 2 parts for the middle school. Research and our own data have shown that opportunities for students to stay connected and continue in some sort of academic opportunity in the summer can be really valuable. We've had jumpstart programs at both the kindergarten and middle schools, and the Bridging Pathways program in our high schools for a small number of students during the summer to prepare for school, and particularly middle school. What that would look like is an opportunity to get in the school building for a couple days before school starts, learn what your locker, where your locker is, how to open a locker, what the expectations are moving from classroom to classroom, and then also some support with some basic academics and learning some of the routines of what middle school looks like compared to what they were used to from primary school. And so we've seen that for the students who've experienced that or participated in that, it's been really beneficial for them. And so so building on that and creating more kinds of summer programs, enrichment programs, and as well as academic jumpstart sort of things. So we've seen good success with that. And then in the high schools, we've had summer school programs for a long time. There's quite a few students who take the wellness classes during the summer, which gives them the opportunity, frees up time in their schedule to be able to pursue other things during the school year with, to go more in depth into classes because they've taken care of credit during the summer. And so we know that that's really been successful for students, and we want to make those opportunities more available.
Ginger.
I have a process question first, Chair.
Yes.
I think that my questions might be better after a motion in terms of discussion. Because I'm trying to understand the board role and how these numbers in the
That would be great, Ginger. If you want to
attach.
starting us, that would be great.
Let me find the motion we're supposed to make. So I move that the West Linn-Wilsonville School Board adopt the 2020 to 2023 student investment account plan as presented for submission to the Oregon Department of Education.
Could I jump in here? I think while these are the strategies, we do have to show you 3 other slides that have to do with budget that you do need to see before you can make that motion. So we're a little bit behind, but let's get to those right now, if that's okay. I know that you've read the document. What was not included were these budget slides, and I think the public should see those as well. So if you're okay, Director Fitch, can we go to those very quickly and then come back to your motion? Okay, I'm seeing some nods. Chair Molitor?
Yes.
So while we now know our 7 strategies and the personnel and kind of the rationale behind those, and that we have kept those, the next part of the application is to make sure that we have accounted for those positions, make sure they're allowable, as well as they meet within the requirements of the grant and the allocated funding. So I'm now going to show you a few documents very quickly. Are you okay, Dr. Flossie, if I just quickly go through these and get us to the questions?
Sure.
Okay. This one just essentially shows that if these are the outcomes, can you see my tool that's kind of circling? If these are the outcomes that we had identified and the 7 strategies we've just now talked through with you, we want to get as many X's as we can in these boxes. How many of these strategies 1 through 7, fulfill the outcomes? And I think what we've got is a very good, strong, overlapping process where a number of our strategies actually fulfill more than one, and in some cases, all of the outcomes. There's a few cases where you see these blanks, and that's where PE teachers in a primary school may not meet some outcomes for high school seniors, or a middle school summer school program, or middle school reading. So we can kind of see that there's a few that are more level specific, but overall we've got a real strong overlapping of outcomes and strategies.
Dr. Ludwig, could I just give a quick word about where those outcomes came from?
Yes.
You'll notice the first 2 outcomes are the focus of the student investment account, increasing academic achievement, eliminating academic disparities, and meeting students' mental and behavioral health needs. And then the other 3 outcomes there, those are the 3 goals from our continuous improvement plan, which we presented to the board in December. So those should look familiar.
Okay. Then we want to make sure that with that in place, the big picture, how we have then taken those 7 strategies, and then down here are all the personnel that were assigned in those, that align to those 7 strategies, and then the cost allocated towards that strategy. And you've already heard about all of the personnel and the programs and the curriculum. That's what Dr. Flossie, Dr. Spencer-Imes went through with you. this graph now shows that if this is as a 3-year plan, you can see the 3 columns here with the X's, the 3 years, how much the first year would be budgeted, and by the end of the 3 years, how much the cost would be. And then the type of priority level we gave that. So that is also in the plan. All of this will be made available to the public on the website. But it just shows you again all the personnel that we talked through, that you just heard about in the 7 strategies, and again, a cost, a budgeted cost associated with each. And then the summary, when you look up here, did we stay within our allocated amount of 7.6 million? And that shows we got pretty close to that. So we are under allocation. We also are allowed to use 5% of the grant for administrative costs. So we have, you can see in this bottom row, besides the 7 strategies, accounted for some administrative costs, personnel to help monitor and keep track of this grant, do the data analysis, and some costs towards business office staff who will manage a lot of this grant. The total of that, and that actually gets us at only 2%. So we're well under the allowable administrative costs. We don't feel we need the 5%. So that's what that sheet is. And then just another way to look at it, again, these are very small numbers, but essentially the same people you just saw in the 7 strategies. And when I draw your attention to in this graph, so there's a lot of redundancy, is actually this 3rd column here that has these letters WRE, H and S, WRE. And what this is saying is it has your, have your activities or strategies aligned to the allowable uses that the state put forward for this grant. Because if it doesn't align, we're not allowed to spend the money on that. So WRE stands for, what is it again, John?
Well-rounded education.
Well-rounded education. H and S is health and safety. RCS is
reducing class size.
Reducing class size. Thank you. Just trying to remember. IIT is instruction, increasing instruction and time. OCS is community partnerships. I forget what letters they're using for what words are they using to match those letters? Our outreach to community, what is it, John?
Community engagement.
Community engagement. So there's a lot of redundancy in these budget documents, but they each serve a purpose to make sure that there's accountability towards, did you spend within your allowable amount? And did you think about your 3 years? Because this is a 3-year grant, even though we fill it out every year, to think about 3 years. And then have you stayed within the allowable uses? And between these 3 documents, we should be able to show that. There's a timeline. We've shared that with you before. But we're also thinking about staggering some of these strategies. Dr. Spencer-Imes, do you want to very quickly talk about the staggering of?
No, there are some components that we were looking to be phasing in a little bit over time. For example, now, well, I don't want to, obviously we have some circumstances that are maybe shifting some things as well in terms of what we were going to be doing for summer programs and things like that we're still holding off on. But the full implementation will be in by 2021 summer was our plan as it is currently written. And then really to have some ongoing processes in place to evaluate the implementation and the outcomes that we're seeing in a very layered approach with spending some of our time in the superintendent's cabinet meetings, reviewing these strategies, outcomes, and looking at the data that are indicators of success there, as well as our leadership forum, which includes our building leaders, our department heads, structures like our leadership retreats, where we go into some deeper data dives, our principals levels meetings, our groups like Inclusive Schools Leadership that includes students and different teacher stakeholders and classified staff, our district equity teams that we've talked about and have been moving forward with reestablishing. And then we have a very active district and parent special education collaboration group.
Just want to let you know that there's an ask for growth targets. This is not something the board has to approve. Given where we are in the timeline, we're going to submit the plan and continue to work on the growth targets that we're identifying when we can get, we got slowed down with the closure of school. We had a few more groups we wanted to process this with, and we kind of suspended that to get everybody up and going with supplemental learning and distance learning. And the state is allowing us to submit the plan and then to submit our growth targets a little bit later. So we're going to do that so we have much deeper understanding among our staff around the rationale for the growth targets that we've identified. And it's actually, that section is just for your information, but it's not needed for board approval of the plan. And again, some of this is redundant. You can read it later, but it just reviews the elements and the rationale of our 7 strategies and who we're hiring, how we're planning to support all the students. This section about what barriers or risks could impact some of this. And of course, we've now identified, well, we've got to make sure we can hire the personnel that we've identified if they're available. And we do know that we have an interrupted school year due to the coronavirus. And we also want to acknowledge that there could be a decline in state tax revenue and we might get a smaller grant. So those could be potential impacts to this plan. We now need you to approve it. It's interesting that right after the approval part comes, oh, do you have a charter school? So we want to recognize that we have been meeting with our charter school. I've asked the leadership there to also do a community needs assessment of their community and to develop an improvement, also an SIA plan, and Director Nick Chapin has done that. We've met multiple times, and they did have an ask that they believe they need, and it's around a part-time counselor for their school. They currently do not have any counselor on their staff, and given the mental behavioral health needs that are very real in their school as well, this is a very understandable ask, and we'd like to do that for them out of our grant. And so we have approved that, and it'll also, some of that will go towards that panorama survey, asking that they use some of the same tools that we're using since we service the same families in our community. And so that would add up to about $75,000 a year out of our large grant that would go towards the charter school. And that concludes the plan. And so I think now we can get into that motion and discussion.
Ginger, would you restate the motion for us, please?
I have a question about the content, and then I'll renew it if that's okay.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, absolutely.
So my question is, of all that funding and all those new FTEs, there is only one that is specific to special education. And I'm assuming that's because we're doing a lot of that work, each licensed teacher in their classroom, but I'm curious about that.
Okay, I'm just going to go back up here so that viewers at home can maybe see. Is this the section you're talking about, strategy 2? Some learning
Correct.
specialists, so these are special education, these are learning specialists are all special education staff.
Okay.
This one actually means priority.
Yeah.
This is the number of people.
I was looking at number 4.
Okay.
Yeah. So this is actually reflecting 11 special education teaching positions. Were you looking at number 4 in that same box, Ginger?
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
So the 11 learning specialists or special education teachers. And then as we bring on more teachers, we need to bring on support for those teachers to mentor and support them. And that's really the role of that then special education instructional coordinator.
Okay, thank you.
Good question.
So I renew the motion I made earlier to adopt this. You want me to be more specific? Okay. So I move that the West Linn-Wilsonville School Board adopt the 2020 through 2023 student investment account plan as presented for submission to the Oregon Department of Education.
Is there a second?
I second.
All right, it's been moved and seconded. Any discussion? And Ginger, I see you already have a hand raised. Let's start with you.
I want to make sure I understand the role of the board in this grant and the interaction between this grant and these monies in our normal budget. So my first question is, again, I should probably know this, but what percentage of this would it be of the $7.5 million for 1 year be as a part of our budget? And then are we already approving those line item amounts without having gone through our budget? Like, so we can't undo that? We can't really relook at that in our budget process?
Okay, so
I might just be confused, but I'm not understanding how it all works together.
yeah. So right now we are living in the 1920 school budget, and that's not changing. That's the one you've approved. This grant doesn't start until 2021. So none of these funds have come to us. When we receive this grant, what you'll start to see then in the budget book is a separate line item just for this grant, similar to what you see this year for Measure 98. So these grants supplement our school state fund. We'll receive a school state fund every year, and then we'll receive these grants. And Measure 98 was also, like this grant, a non-competitive grant. Every school district got one in Oregon and had to fill out a plan for how they were going to spend the amount given per high school student and put together, again, strategies, activities, and how we would spend it. That grant did not have to go to the budget, to the board for adoption. It was written as a different grant because it was part of state money allocations and did not go to voters. It went to voters under Measure 98, but it didn't go to a level around community engagement. This grant with the Student Success Act has within it quite a deep expectation that the community gets involved in giving feedback to each district and around what is needed within this grant and what their hope is on how the district will spend the funds. And with this grant, we do bring it before the board for approval. It's not expected that the board members would get into the weeds like with regular budget building and begin to shuffle the numbers around and say, instead of 7 specialists, I think you need 8, but that you would trust that staff has done their thorough job of surveying the community, listening to the groups, putting forward strategies, and then assigning positions, activities, investments with an allocated amount. So your role at this time is to look at the entirety and to think more around, has our plan as a district met the expectations and allowable investments that has been put forward by the state? And have we done our due diligence to engage our community? Do these strategies reflect what the board believes also that our district needs and what they believe they have heard from in the community through surveys and the engagement process? Does it align to what you believe are those outcomes that we've identified for our district are the priority outcomes for our school district versus maybe a neighboring school district? So while your role was not to create or to build this plan, it is to look at it in its entirety and see if it does match the outcomes, the expectations, and then the allowable investments that have been put forward by the state. I'll see if Josh or Jennifer want to add anything to that.
And I would just add a comment if I could. You've explained it so succinctly, Dr. Ludwig, that light bulbs are going on in my head, because as I reviewed this plan, in my 7 years on the school board, nearly 7 at this point, there's been times where our community has come to us and asked us for a variety of things, all things that they're relatively reasonable asks, but with budgetary constraints, at the end of the day, you have to make some hard choices as to how much of any one thing in particular we're able to fund. And there's been a lot of times where we've been on the cusp of being able to fund it, but we couldn't quite get there. And when I read through this grant, it was just time and time again, I was like, oh my gosh, that's what our community has been asking for. And the excitement is now I think we get to, we get to do it. We can get those personnel and those strategies in place to actually completely deliver. And I think that the magic of this is that this is largely community driven, and it was set up by our state, because a lot of times at the state level, you have them telling you what they believe is best for your community and where your funds should go. And this time, it said, here's your money. You tell us where you want to go within these categories. And I don't know, when I went through it, I was struck time and time again by the pulse of the community that I've heard in my time on this board. Actually now finally, it's not just finally being met, because I know we've done the best of our ability to meet those asks to date, but I just felt like, I think that they're going to feel the dial being moved now by these moves. So I felt the two coming together. So thank you.
There may be a question by someone viewing this in the public. I don't see a lot about high school and graduation and supporting high school students. And just to make a comment that much of our funding in Measure 98, the High School Success Act, actually takes care of that. And so where we see 9th grade success teams, high school counselors, our college and career director, that's still funded through Measure 98. We do have some strategies in here that will support high school students. You saw that in the summer strategy, as well as some additional teachers, some of the online learning. But we feel that our Measure 98 supplement is quite a focused effort for high school success and CTE expansion. And so that's part of what Measure 98 is about.
Ginger, did you have additional questions?
I just would be asking the district, when we come to assuming that we're moving forward, we're going to get this grant next year and coming years, that our budget line items for expenditures reflect when it's attached to this grant, so that I know that these FTs are actually coming from this grant rather than our general fund, but the funds that we get for state school fund. I think that'd be helpful.
Absolutely. And internally, that's critical. We need to always make sure that we are paying the staff out of the appropriated funding. And so there's other documents that we haven't shown tonight that we have that actually work with our business office to then make sure that whether staff are being paid through Measure 98 or staff are being paid through this grant, that we have that well coordinated and organized, because we're, in some ways, this is an unprecedented way to do school budgeting. More and more we're seeing that supplemental support or additional funding to K-12 schools is now coming in the form of grants instead of just an increase to the state school fund. And we might be on a new trend with that in public education, or this might be it. But just like we track our local option, how do we allocate the funding for that and who's paid through local option? Now we also have these two grants, Measure 98 and the student investment account. So do you recall I at one point had given each of you this funding landscape, I think it was 11 by 17 document that just showed when we communicate to our community, particularly during a bond, how we help them understand the funding landscape and what are the restrictions around certain types of funding and what are the opportunities, because grant funds often have a very specific criteria to them and can't just be used for anything and everything. So it's really important to keep that funding landscape in mind. Okay, Chair Molitor, we need to unmute you.
Sorry, I was just, any additional questions or inquiries before we have Kelly call the vote?
I just briefly want to say, just again, how impressed I am with the process, and it would be fun to ask 10 questions for each of these strategies and really get down to the nitty-gritty about how this will be applied. And I would love to know, is the state going to stick by what they said they were going to do and keep this in place for us and all those things? But I know not only do we not have time, we don't have answers for some of those. And so overall, just another example of really exemplary work. And I feel like I can vote yes on this with confidence about the data you collected and the plan you put forward.
All right, Kelly, would you please call up for a vote?
Regan Molitor,
Yes.
Chelsea King,
Aye.
Christy Thompson,
Aye.
Dylan Hides,
Aye.
Ginger Fitch.
Aye.
Thank you.
I want to thank our board for approving this plan. It allows us to now submit it to the state. The deadline is April 15th, so we're well within that, and we can now get this moved and uploaded onto their online format. I want to also just call out my gratitude to Dr. Josh Flossie, who did an exemplary amount of work in filling this out and collecting data. I also want to thank Andrew Kilstrom, who gathered a lot of data from our community forums and all of our surveys, and together the two of them have spent an enormous number of hours making this look so easy to read and presentable, and there's a lot of depth behind each of these strategies in getting to this point. And so I want to thank the two of them in particular, as well as Dr. Jennifer Spencer-Imes, who also worked with a lot of groups to make sure that we were meeting the needs of our community and our patrons. So thank you, and thank you, Josh, very much for all your work with this. And his work doesn't end, because now he's got to get this uploaded, and we're going to still work on those growth targets with our principals and staff while we can these next few weeks and get those in as well. So thank you, everyone.
Thank you, and well said, Dr. Ludwig. Next, we get to move on to our broad timelines and any kind of questions or concerns we may have around the impact of COVID-19 to those projects.
Okay, so I'm going to ask Curtis if he can just pull up the memo. We don't have a slideshow for this. We thought we would just open it up to questions from our board. This could go 2 minutes, 3 minutes, 5 minutes, but we thought we'd give you our panel of staff to address your questions. So we'll now take this screen down.
Yep, I'm working on it.
Okay. So let's just go ahead and open the conversation. We had one board member wrote in some questions, so the staff is ready to address those. We also engaged with our legal counsel earlier last week, as well as again today, and Chair Molitor joined us for a Zoom meeting with our legal counsel as we went through some of the questions from board members. Thank you again, Chair Molitor, for doing that today.
So I believe you can see the memo now.
Yeah. So again, we know that questions may surface either from our public or from our board. given the COVID-19 pandemic, the closure of schools, of non-essential businesses, public works departments, what does that mean in terms of timeline or projects that were identified in our bond? And in this memo, we have again identified those projects that we were going to begin attending to this spring and summer. Just as a refresher, we had presented those to you, I believe, last board meeting. And so here they are again, just so you have those handy. And again, I'll open it up now to board members to ask questions of our panel. We have in our panel Mr. Remo Douglas, who is the Senior Project Manager for the bond projects. We have Mr. Patrick McGuff, who is our Chief of Operations, and Curtis Nelson, who is our Chief of Information Technology Services. We also have Dr. Sonley Hughes online, who of course oversees the financials for all of this. And she was also part of the conversation we had with legal counsel in terms of this question.
All right. And Chelsea, do you want to start us off?
Thanks. I'm so used to getting to listen for a little bit of explanation. So, and I certainly don't always have to be the first one to go. So I can't read other people's body language to see. So I think I have two questions. One is just coming up as I review this memo and thinking about the grants, the grant monies that we anticipated coming and how much things have changed. And I'm recalling the grant, the matching grant that we were awarded when we passed the capital bond. And I think it was an additional like $7 million or something matching grant. Have we heard anything about that? I mean, do we board assume that we still will get that money, or is that another thing that is being passed around at the state level?
I'd be happy to jump in on that one. Am I coming through? Okay. Yeah, we've been in contact with the state over the course of the spring. There's a number of documents that we have to submit around our bond sale to verify that we're moving forward and that we are in fact eligible for the grant. And so we're working through all of that and plan to submit our final documentation in the next few weeks here. And all indications from the state are that this is business as usual. We have not heard anything to the contrary around the awesome grant.
Okay. And I remember, gosh, was it a month ago that we last met together and we heard Dr. Ludwig give the presentation. It was right before we had that rapid dominoes of events that basically closed the schools. And I remember asking, in general, do we know how, what's happening economically might affect, things like these projects we already bid. So it's something I know we talked about that evening and continues to just bounce around. I don't know that there's an easy answer. There's probably a lot that's unknown, but any insight that you have helps me just, understand what to expect coming up with these projects.
Remo, do you want to go ahead and start?
Well,
Or Pat?
maybe I can jump in to begin and kind of give an overview of what we see in the construction market. And while we've been busy with the COVID virus, there's been one group that has, without hesitation, kept right on going. That's the bond program led by Remo. Remo quickly set up remote meetings with all the project managers, the designers, and all the stakeholders to make sure they're all engaged. One of those is also the project management organization that he belongs to in CBRE Heary, who's been checking in on the market, not just nationally, but
We may never know.
Remo, you might have to finish his thoughts.
Yeah, so
If you can hear us, we've lost you. And so while you work to get video and audio back, we're going to shift over to Remo to finish, I think, the train of thinking that you were going with.
Yeah. So we've brought on 5 project managers with CBRE HERE under the procurement that the board approved earlier this spring. It's a great team of experienced folks, and we are checking in every week with different parts of the industry, trying to read those signals about what this all means. To date, the really quick summary is still a cautious optimism about the future. There are certain minor constraints that are showing themselves in the industry, but in general, material supply is there, permits are processing. The construction industry is still engaged and busy about doing its work. I had a few points I was going to follow up with after Pat, so I'll just roll into those. So as Pat mentioned, construction management and design teams are in place. The board approved those selections. All teams are moving forward. The designers have been working in digital format in a lot of ways for a number of years. And we've just transitioned our whole team to using those same strategies. And so everybody's, getting used to seeing each other's living rooms or home offices, but in the back of camera, but we're just moving forward. The majority of the bond work is scheduled to begin in summer of 2021 or later. The time before then is about design and permit. And those are things that are really easy to do remotely. We're having a lot of success using Zoom and other tools to just keep project moving forward. We're right on the same schedule we were 3 months ago before we knew this was a thing. So all that's working good. Staff are being engaged. We've got a solid group at Wilsonville High School around the new auditorium and all the implications there that's been meeting, and they've just jumped right in. Everybody's getting used to these remote tools. And we're also working on our plans for the community engagement. How do we reach out to the community, get feedback, show what we're doing? We're actively working on a plan around that. I mentioned that we're reaching out to community, to industry contacts. We're developing project marketing tools to help us reach out to contractors, including minority and women-owned businesses. CBRE HERE, along with us, have strong feelings about the importance of that, and making sure that all those firms know that the work is happening and that they're wanted here, that they are valuable parts of the industry. And so we're being proactive about that. So in general, the delays that would come out of any future changes that might happen as a result of the virus are considered force majeure. Most of the board are probably familiar with that term, or acts of God. And our contracts have clauses that contemplate them. We're also working with legal counsel as this progresses on what additional strengthening of those terms might be appropriate. How do we create, fair and secure contracts for the district? So then there's the work for this upcoming summer 2020. At this time, the contractors we have on board are indicating that they're ready to proceed as planned, that their supply chains are intact, and that the labor force is at least sufficient to get going on the work. If we do experience any delays from further changes from government closures or other things, we're confident in our ability to allow those schedules to extend into a school year and adapt our projects to do that safely. Construction in occupied facilities happens every day all over the world, and we've got a team here who knows how to deal with that, and we can adapt if we need to. Also, kind of on a different note, the program in an uncertain economic time has a lot of benefits to an industry and a workforce that needs to earn money and keep people employed. The construction labor for our public improvements processes earns prevailing wages, which are wages at or near, I'm going to forget the word, but wages at rates that are competitive with anyone, including union labor. It's very good work for those people in the skilled trades who are doing that, and so there's a lot of benefit to that. The construction industry is very familiar with personal protective equipment and spacing. There's lots of work that they do every day that requires spacing anyway. All the equipment they use, dealing with electricity and other things. And so adapting to a social distancing measure on construction sites is something that they'll be able to deal with pretty readily. At the federal level, construction has been considered an essential service. And so we have some confidence that we won't experience direct closures. And that applies to the supply industry as well. So we're also exploring opportunities to begin summer 2020 work early. If there's work where starting early won't directly impact daily classes should they resume, we're working with our contractors to see, could we start that work early? Could that be used as a tool to mitigate against any future delays that might happen, or any other closures or things? So yeah, we're moving towards that. Some of our contractors are indicating interest in that, even if it's just getting in and exploring, what demolition needs to happen, what exploration behind walls and things needs to happen. What can we get out of the way before the summer in order to facilitate construction? So in short, while conditions are subject to change, at this time, staff is proceeding as planned. And we're open to any other questions you might have.
How did I do on my presentation, by the way?
We lost you a little bit through it. Did you have anything you would like to add or didn't get to complete saying?
I'm good. What a perfect time for the internet to go down.
It's just par for the course for the way you've come into this job, right?
You never sounded better, Pat.
Christy, did you have something?
Yeah, I had just one quick question. Underneath the spring summer bond projects for the new Athey Creek Middle School at Dollar Street, it lists the two activities, our land use planning and then the design committee. And I'm just curious, I remember when you presented at a presentation that we did with our joint work session with the West Linn City Council, and when you mentioned all of the different community outreaches that we would be doing in regards to the new Athey Creek. And I'm just wondering, with the design and as we start to move forward, if we have planned, how we're reaching out to the community to make sure that they're aware of it or a part of it, or I don't even know, maybe this part of the design isn't. I'm just curious, just making sure that we're keeping in touch with that community that continues to have concerns about the school.
Yeah.
Before Remo answers, I'm just going to say your question is so timely, Christy. Andrew Kilstrom and I had just talked this week about giving the Willamette Neighborhood Association an update. The last we left, at least with that group, was that we were going to have some community meetings after we had hired a land use planner. And then, of course, all of this hit, and now, we're not going to gather a community physically. And yet it's also, I think, really important that we give them an opportunity when we can see them physically and they're together to provide that kind of a forum, in addition to something that could even be, survey related. So we can still do those things. We'll provide them with an update to let them know we haven't forgotten them and we're not going to leapfrog over that process, but that we're just going to need to push it further into the calendar. Remo, could you give an update on where we are with at least the land use planner and some of the onboarding that's been happening there with that group?
Yeah, so we are we have been interviewing and talking with firms. One in particular has risen to the top from some of the staff's point of view. Of course, all of this is happening. We've been trying to figure out how to get a number of people into a room. I think you really need to have an in-person conversation with these folks to really make sure the district's comfortable with a fit in presentation and culture from this group. And between all of the virus things interrupting meetings and consuming administration time, and my own wife was a presumptive positive case, so we're in home quarantine till at least Thursday to do our 2-week time. So there's been some challenges in getting them in person, but we have been in communication with them. They do have a lot of ideas about how to best work through that public relations process and bring that community along with the project. A lot of those actually involve smaller group conversations, and so there may be ways that we figure out how to do that despite the current situation, that we can schedule times to be meeting and visiting with folks remotely. So I don't want to get it too far ahead of them before they're officially selected and out here, but I can tell you that there is good work being done and that we're working on finalizing those decisions. In the meantime, we're getting basic code interpretation assistance and that sort of thing to make sure that as we're considering design possibilities, that the design team's not being held back by that. So we are working on it, and it really goes for all the projects. That one's the one that's kind of been at the forefront of folks' minds, but we also have Amy Berger, our office manager, who's really taking on more of a leadership role these days. She's working on a draft of a communications plan for how we're going to provide updates on all of these projects out to the community with emails and website updates and things. She's been helpful in that work for years. And so I've tasked her as a leadership exercise for her, that she would create that plan and work, then work with us to finalize it, and then kind of lead the project management group in handling those communications. So there's a lot we're doing to make sure that we're going to be communicating clearly with the community.
Thank you.
Christy, did you have more questions? I'm sorry.
No, I'm sorry. I just keep forgetting to take my hand off.
All right. I just had one question that I think is probably a little bit of just public interest, and I've seen or heard a couple, I think, fellow board members also raise it, and maybe you could just briefly let us know about there's been just a wondering around use of bond funds and whether or not you could utilize any of those funds, to direct them toward new online learning initiatives related to distance learning and COVID-19. And could you just refresh our memory on how we are lawfully allowed to use those bond funds?
Sure. So we did speak with legal counsel in preparation for the meeting around some of these questions, and they are, as ever, very succinct in their comments. So we asked a series of long questions about all of this, and they gave a single word response: no. We cannot retarget funds to things that weren't contemplated by voters. We don't get to not do things that were promised to voters, short of getting to the end and not having enough money to do projects, at which point a board would make some sort of selection. So the bond funds are restricted to those items specified in the bond language leading up to the election.
Should I raise my hand? I'm sorry, I just unmuted myself. Just one more quick question around timeline. When as a board should we anticipate having another batch of contracts that we'll be voting on? Is that something that's going to happen next month, 4 months? Like, if I could have a sense of when that next batch might be coming along.
Sure. So the last contracts I think we'll have for this year are around those safety and security upgrades projects. Those would probably be sometime in May that they would come to the board. It's been something of a challenge to get some certain conversations done, but they're wrapping up those designs in the next week or two here, and then we'll have them out on the street. We do expect that those contracts will be of a size that they need to go to the board. And so sometime in May, we would expect to get those in front of you.
Okay, so it's safe to expect that probably for the coming couple years or something, we'll every couple months or so have another batch of contracts that are coming in front of the board. This will be an ongoing process for some time to come.
Yeah. So a lot of the major projects that, the new schools, major additions and those things, those take between a year and a half to design. And so while a lot of that work is happening now to kick off the initial phases of those designs, it's a long while yet before we'll be engaging with contractors. And so, between November of this year and April of next year, there'll be another wave of contracts as we complete designs, get them out to bid, and then bring them before the board. So, yes, it will be periodic. Ideally you get them bid between November and March before a summer construction season starts.
All right.
Could I just add?
Yes.
Some folks might be wondering, if students don't return to school this year and don't occupy the buildings, is there an opportunity to get a head start on some projects that we would have been waiting for until summer? And the answer to that is yes, if we can. If those contractors are able to adjust their timeline as well, and we're able to get the product that we need to fulfill some of those projects, and you saw the list of some of those, we could be able to do some of those facility improvements earlier than later into the summer, which actually creates a great way to then start in the fall with some of those a little further behind us than so close running up to the start of school. Okay, thank you so much. Thank you, panel, for being there and being available to the board's questions.
You can count on me.
Well, yes, thank you very much. And we will move on to our business office and some proposals with regard to our budget timeline. And Dr. Hughes, as you're getting ready also to share it with us, I will just let you know you did a fantastic job of outlining in the memo kind of the proposed timeline changes. And we'd love to hear more from you.
Good evening. Thank you, Chair Molitor. In front of you is the proposed new timeline for fiscal 2020 and 2021 budget adoption. So although the Oregon Department of Education indicate that they will prioritize state school fund, Mention 98, nutrition services, high schools, high cost stability, and in the addition to that, Clackamas County Assessment and Tax confirmed with me today that they don't have any indication that May 15 deadline had been adjusted for property tax. With all of that, we as district leaders still think with the Executive Order 2012 from Governor issued on March 23, Stay Home, Save Life, this will certainly have an impact on our Oregon economic revenue, and that most likely will impact our district funding. With that, I would like to propose moving the 2020-21 budget approval and adoption process from May to June 2020. Our hope is that by moving the timeline from May to June, it might allow us for more time to learn more information to come forward regarding the status of the state school fund, Measure 98, and especially the new student investment account. It's also late in May, so about May 20. Normally we have the Oregon Economic Forecast quarterly report will coming out, and that will help a lot with our budget for fiscal year 2021. So on this memo, in the bottom, you will see on the left-hand side is the items, the middle columns is the current days, and then on the right-hand side is the proposed new day. The first one is the budget listening and learning section. We schedule on April 1st of this year, 2020, but due to the executive order, Stay Home, Save Life, we propose to move this to May 29. We will post it online and receive asking community members to send in question or comment through the survey. Although the Department of Revenue confirmed that we don't need to offer this section because it is not requirement through the budget law, but our district still would like to provide this information section to our community member. And then the superintendent budget message in the current approval from board member, we plan to have that on this coming regular school board meeting on May 4. We would like to propose it to June 8 during the regular school board meeting. And if that will lead to the budget committee work session on May 18, we'll move it to June 22nd. And if it needed, then we will hold the second budget committee work session on June 24. And we hope to have the budget hearing and adoption on June 29 instead of June 8. So the bottom line is we must adopt the budget for fiscal year 2021 by June 30th of 2020 in order for us to spend money on July 1st for the fiscal year 2021. So with that, I'm looking for the approval from board member for us with the new date.
I'll move that the board adopt the proposed new timeline for the 2021 budget adoption.
I'll second.
All right, it's been seconded. Is there discussion?
I just have an additional question for Dr. Hughes, if you want it now or later.
Yes, please.
Dr. Hughes, I'm curious about the delayed tax filings on the local levy, and if that's something that'll just be sorted out in time, or you perceive that to be a potential issue as well.
The government extended the federal tax filing into July 15, but that should not impact our local levy because the money are derived from property tax. And like I mentioned earlier, Lackawanna County Assessment and Tax confirmed this morning that they don't have any indication that they will delay or extend the deadline for property tax. So all of the property tax still due to them on May 15.
Christy, did you have a question?
Yeah, I just had a question. Just looking at the timeline, I know that June 22nd, we were supposed to devoting to the superintendent evaluation. And so then I was just curious how that might adjust the superintendent evaluation. And obviously being the rookie, I don't even know how much time the superintendent evaluation, but my thought was, if we've got both of those things going that night, does that give us an appropriate amount of time to address two pretty big? And so then how do we adjust from that? That was just my kind of curiosity with the timeline.
Sure, that's a great question, something to consider as a board. Certainly we've had work sessions where we've had two topics, where we've had the budget committee together and worked through a work session, whether it's taken an hour and a half, and then taken a break, and the non-board member budget committee members left, and board members stayed, and then had a second topic on the agenda. You could still do that. You kind of make it a little bit of a marathon evening, but that would allow you to do multiple things in one evening instead of calling a special session for the superintendent evaluation. If you felt you were close enough on that topic that it wouldn't take you long to convene and work on that, you could certainly keep it for that same evening.
And Christy, also just from a process standpoint, typically that portion of superintendent evaluation is just Chelsea as our chair sharing out what the conclusion of that process. So it's a pretty short and concise statement to the public about what the board has.
Thank you. Yeah, I had no idea what, so that's why I was raising the question. So thank you for clarifying.
All right, just refresh my memory because I apologize. Have we had a motion? Okay.
Oh yeah, we did. Sorry.
Okay, so I know. Okay, good. It's not just me. So okay, we've got a motion and a second. Anything further? I'm not seeing any hand raised. So Kelly, would you please call it?
Reagan Molitor.
Yes.
Chelsea King.
Aye.
Christy Thompson.
Aye.
Dylan Hides.
Aye.
Ginger Fitch.
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
And thank you, Dr. Hughes, and everyone for being thoughtful too about adjusting this budget process in light of new circumstances. So thank you. And Dr. Ludwig, I believe we are back to you for just kind of an update on what distance learning for all is and what it means and how we got to where we are.
All right, I am going to again try to switch my screens. Oh, don't. Oops. Can folks see my screen yet?
No.
Pardon? No. Okay, oh, that's right. One other step. Oops. Thank you for your patience.
Chair, is it appropriate to do a 5-minute, let's get up and stand and take a break, even in a Zoom meeting?
No, absolutely. I think that's a great idea. It is, yeah, 8:26. So how about 8:31? Promptly, we'll start again.
Why don't we have everyone turn off their video camera so it just shows your name? Get up and stretch.
How do we do that?
There's at the bottom by the mute button, it says the video, and just click on that.
All right, thank you.
And what was the time? 5 minutes?
Yeah, 5 minutes.
Okay.
Mute your microphones as well.
I couldn't find myself again. I had to go up on the.
All right, I said we'd start at 8:31 and it's now 8:32.
Students, and that by April 13th, that plan would need to be launched by all school districts and communicated to parents. The work that we were already doing around enhanced supplemental learning, I think positioned us well to move to this stage. We had shifted from resources that were kind of planned more levels based to already we were having teams, getting more specific resources for supplemental learning together for parents. And now the shift is moving to more to individual teachers and classrooms having that learning more focused and targeted for families and students. So some of the key elements of distance learning, and we're going to keep these points aligned to what we hear also from the Oregon Department of Education, making sure that students connect regularly with their teachers, that we have to think about what is the most important learning or standards remaining to be gained and learned for the remainder of the year and focus on those. Working with families and caregivers as we now shift to learning being done at home and families having varying degrees of ability to sit with their children or work with their children. We want to recognize that we have many families in our district that are going to work outside the home, that are serving either in healthcare or law enforcement, first responders, grocery store, gas station, essential businesses, and some of those places where they're not at home to sit with their children and create a structured learning environment. Children are working independently to do that. And we need to understand the stress that that can create for families as they navigate that. How do teachers then continue to monitor, report, and record students' progress toward those learning goals is more nuanced. It's an easy statement to read, but it has a lot of complexities to it, and we'll get into those later. Understanding again that we can't expect every home environment to have the equal playing field or that they all look the same either. That for some students, they might be able to give a considerable amount of time to their learning at home, and for other students, they're going to try the best they can, and it might be pretty minimal, depending on their situation. And that particularly, we think about high school students. For them, we have credits and grades, and I'll talk later about seniors and graduation. So what we shared with our administrators, our expectations for them is that they need to be available and to work their full days remotely. Some of them will have authorization to work on site, limited hours with social distancing, because there are just some parts of their job where they need to access some of their tools at the school office. We do want to keep our reader boards current. It's a way also of communicating with our families. And staff are using the Google platform to connect with each other as well as students. And so our administrators are connecting with their staff, just like staff are connecting with students. They're holding all district staff meetings, grade level meetings, PLC meetings, department meetings, meetings with specialists, a lot of Zoom meetings going on with various configurations so that we can keep communication going and engaging with the community in a variety of ways. We're also very mindful that our school administrators not only need to connect with their staff about their work with students, but about their own professional work. And so how we think about these remaining months in terms of evaluations and giving feedback to our teachers is some work that we're going to do with our HR department. And we want to do that kind of work also with care and compassion and fairness to our staff. These are some of the expectations we outlined to our certified staff so that we would have more alignment across the district and not a variety of approaches going on. The guardrails, so to speak, that help create boundaries for our staff to support them as well as give guidance. We wanted to make sure that we used a consistent platform so that parents weren't navigating and having to learn a variety of different platforms depending on what school their child was in. As they learned one tool, they could then apply it across all the schools. We understand, just like we did tonight, people lose internet connection. Some places it's not consistent, and some places it's not there at all. And we have to be mindful of the equity and access issue there. And so we are making paper packets available to our K-8 students. And already those went out today. They are available for pickup at the same locations where the meals are being picked up. So at all primary schools is where those can be picked up. We ask teachers to make sure that they're connecting with their students and families weekly. And then there's some guidelines around ways to do that, how to use email or Google Classroom, where the connections are visible, and that a reminder of phone calls are to parents and guardians. We did put parameters in place around live video instruction. This may vary if you're hearing about other school districts, but for ours and a few others in our county, and in consultation with our legal counsel, we felt that to start, we would be more cautious around live video interaction, and that as we learn more, we can loosen or widen the guardrails, so to speak. But primarily, our plan is for asynchronous learning, meaning that students can opt into their learning at a time that works best for them, when their internet is working, when their parents are available, when they have the structure set up in their home or someone to assist them. And then not every child or family is ready at 9 a.m. or 10:30 or 11 for synchronous learning, meaning that everybody's learning at the same time, but that we really need to plan for learning that can best meet the needs of the families and the time that they have, given the variability that is likely going on in everyone's homes. So for us, it's about equity, making sure that some students aren't having access to a type of instruction that other students are not able to. And that it's also about safety and privacy. Not every family feels the same level of comfort for their home to be viewed through video interaction around what's in the background or who might be listening, even when we only see one face on the screen. So there are many of those considerations that we've been talking through with our legal counsel, and this is where we've landed. We do want to make an exception, however, for those very small but important times when students' family believes that the instruction coming to them is best viewed through video and through very specific in-time coaching. You can probably think about different types of physical therapy, occupational therapy, speech therapy, where in-time coaching to some discrete skills is really important. Those would be the exceptions, and they would be authorized as exceptions. And we will also not conduct home visits during this time. So as we met with staff remotely, we talked about during distance learning for all, what might a typical week look like, so that we have some sustainability. And this is a structure we put together that will serve us not only this week as we've started or last week, but actually if we don't come back to school, it will be the structure that we'll use going forward. What does a typical Monday look like for a staff member at home? You can see this notion of signing in with Google form. That's staff's way of attending to their professional work and letting their principal know that they're doing professional work that day. And then Monday is that time when lessons are posted and they begin to hear back from students or even send an email. This is what we've posted, and here's your assignments for the week. Tuesdays are a day to really check in with students, to receive feedback from students about clarity to any of the assignments or activities, connecting with families. Wednesdays and Thursdays, beginning to plan for the following week, but again, continuing to respond to students and families, emails, giving feedback. And then we're going to start with, we'll see if this works well, just start with this idea of how do we continue also our professional learning, because within our calendar, we have those days available to us when PLCs do learning, when staff meetings are about learning, we have workshops. How do we maintain that level of professional growth? And that Fridays could be a day when a webinar is sent to teachers, or they're asked to view a video clip, or to read the next chapter in their book that they're all reading together, and have a discussion group. So we've set aside Fridays for that type of professional learning, knowing that they will still need to likely maybe finish up some plans or keep responding to students and families. If it doesn't become too overwhelming, we would like to keep Fridays as a professional learning day. If we hear from our teachers that they're spending quite a bit of time, particularly I think about our secondary teachers who may have 150 students or 130 students responding to emails and giving feedback, we can adjust those Fridays accordingly. So this is at the crux of the recommendations that came from the state around what does it mean to have distance learning for all, and the expectations around a primary day, a week at home, middle school, acknowledging that things are not business as usual, that we are in the middle of a pandemic, that families are juggling work at home in addition to now helping their children learn, in addition to all the other stressors or responsibilities going on, and the constraints to business as usual. And so these guidelines came from the Oregon's extended school closure guidance, distance learning for all, from the Oregon Department of Education. It's a 29-page document. I sent you a copy of that. It's also available on ODE's website and multiple places. But essentially, they have outlined for us what this will look like in terms of hours, that there's an expectation now for teachers to do some lead learning, to lead the learning for an amount of minutes per day, and then to give time for students to opt into some additional supplemental learning. And then also, what might it look like if a student or family spent some time meeting what's called nutritional and wellness needs. And those examples, I think the teacher-led learning may be the most typical that we think of. It's maybe a teacher presents a problem and how to work through it, give some examples. This could be done by a teacher video or a description. That's the learning that the teacher is leading. The supplemental learning could be referring them to, you could read for half an hour a day. You could, if you're thinking about your music student, you could practice doing some singing. What are all those other things that supplement that don't need the teacher to instruct? And then in terms of the meeting nutrition and wellness, making sure that students are exercising, that they're getting outside to walk, that they're eating a meal, and that they're taking care of their emotional well-being as well. And so there's examples of in each of those categories given to teachers so that they can send those suggestions to families. And then you can see the recommended hours. There's a caution on the part of the Department of Education around sending families, you know, an equivalent of, well, when your child was with us, we had 6 hours of learning. We're going to send you every day 6 hours of assignments. And easily you can see that that would be overwhelming to a family that's also trying to juggle responsibilities in the day-to-day at home. You can think about in high school too, how that would add up. So these are the guidelines that were sent by the Department of Education that all school districts in Oregon are following. That's primary. Middle school has just a little different configuration because there's the different subject matter, the courses in the schedule, whether it's content or core content or electives. And then there's high school. Because our school is on a semester calendar, some school districts in Oregon are on trimesters, we're on semesters. Within the semesters are the quarters to give feedback to parents and give progress reporting. And our third quarter was ending, right before the closure. And so there were some incomplete activities or feedback that teachers, students maybe were in the middle of doing presentations. You can imagine the variety of different projects. And so for our middle school and high school, we did recommend that this week of April 6th, instead of assigning new learning, to spend time closing up quarter 3. And if there were reports that students still wanted to turn in, or an assignment for feedback to allow students to feel some closure to quarter 3, nested within that second semester. And that quarter 4 would officially start on April 13th. So we made that determination as a school district. It made sense for us to do it that way instead of designing some supplemental learning for the week of the 6th. So some of the biggest questions for us seem to land around high school students, where credit completion, grades, transcripts, graduation all of a sudden come into play. In terms of AP classes, what we have heard from the College Board is that they're going to continue with the AP classes and offer support for students and resources to help them prepare, but that they believe much of the learning towards the courses has taken place, and that now it's really about preparing for the exams, and that students can prepare at home, and that they can that they'll have those dates for the exams. We typically mandate in our district, we ask students, if they're going to take an AP class, we want you to take the exam. This year, we will remove that mandate in our district. If there's a student that feels the conditions have changed for him and her, and they don't feel emotionally or academically ready and don't want to have that additional stress, they can opt out of taking the exam. Usually it's an option anyway, but in our district, we've just signed up every student for the exam and paid for it because we want them to give it a try. And they never know how, they might do, and it could be a good experience. But we understand that this year could be challenging for some students to feel either prepared or emotionally wanting to do something like that this year. We'll continue with encouraging students to apply for scholarships. We'll continue to ask our partners to support those. We have many community partners who, you can think of the Rotary and the Lions and many community groups that allocate funds very generously to scholarships, and we're going to encourage them to keep that in place. Our students still rely on those, and that we will continue being busy. Our staff does a beautiful job writing a lot of letters to colleges and to those scholarship donors on behalf of students. That will continue. And this was mentioned a little bit already, but we're going to continue to pursue an opportunity for our seniors to have some type of a graduation recognition and celebration with classmates. And then the question also becomes, are there some changes in terms of grades and graduation credits? And that has been a long process for our Department of Education. We've been called into meetings several times with proposed ideas, asked as superintendents to give feedback. They've gone back to the drawing board, reworked things. Colt Gill and his staff have consulted with Higher Education Commission, with various stakeholder groups, with students, with superintendents, a few superintendents that represent our state, with the governor, thinking about the best way to go about this so that we hold our students harmless for a situation that is out of their choosing, and make sure that they graduate as successfully as possible. A lot of ideas have been floated around, do we reduce the number of credits? Do we keep the number of credits? Do we give everyone a pass-fail? Do we do some type of a modification to letter grades? And I do have to say, it's so complicated, but I continue to be inspired and impressed with our leaders in Salem who at the heart of this think about equity. They're thinking about students' well-being. They're thinking about every student's learning environment at home and what they can control for and what they can't, and what would be the most fair thing for the students of Oregon in terms of this. And I appreciate the time they're spending instead of rushing into a quick answer to appease maybe a group that wants to know right away. They've slowed down and really considered all of the options. They've done a lot of consulting with other states. They've looked at the model in Kansas, Washington, California, Texas, to see how states who have closed early have tackled this very question. And not only with distance learning, but also around grades and graduation. As of last week, we thought we were going with one proposal. And what I've learned in all of this is be ready to pivot and just to hold. And sure enough, late last night, we got another message from Department of Education to be prepared for a meeting early this morning for another shift in how grades and credits and graduation would look. And the information we got is embargoed. And so we're going to hold that, but it will be released tomorrow. What I can share with you is that what I believe in terms of the decision that the Department of Education has come up with does provide for our students to be successful and to end the year in a way that holds them harmless to the situation in hand. It does consider mental and emotional health, equity and access, differentiation and learning while at home. There is provisions in that where we can, as districts, support students with their free and appropriate education, English language services, and special education. And we've been reminded that we also have the full summer to extend learning opportunities, that a student isn't done with their 4th year of high school until actually August 31st. That the graduation ceremony is kind of an arbitrary timeline, but that they have actually all summer to complete their high school career. And so not forget that we can utilize summer as much as possible for families who will need it. So tomorrow, as far as I last heard, the Department of Education will release publicly to media and others the plan for graduation and credits. And then we can begin to interpret that for our families and explain what that will look like for West Linn-Wilsonville. You wish you had the board meeting tomorrow night, don't you? Just the timing. I was ready tonight to share with you what last week's proposal was going to look like and let you think about it. And then it was a shift. In terms of expectation for our classified staff, with distance learning for all. Most of them will be engaged in professional learning at home, but will be involved in helping to think about how to support a teacher with a delivery of lessons and plans and input that they might have. This is also the group, when you think about the broad group of classified staff that have been busy working even with the closure, whether they're preparing and delivering meals or doing essential facility operations and cleaning. They also are the group when we talk about those paper packets that are those who feel comfortable, willing to come in and run those off and do some clerical work. It is also our classified staff that should we need to move to a child care service that will call upon them to help provide that. The staff who are able to do that and not in the high risk category. This is where secretaries, you have to kind of hold them back because they'd love to just do all sorts of stuff at home, but we do want to remind our families that schools are closed and that we just need to go slowly in terms of the kinds of communication that we send out, making sure that it fits. Every April, we usually send a certain type of letter or communication home. We just need to put a pause on it and think about, is this the right one for April, given the conditions that we're in and how to move forward. Asking folks to be really thoughtful about the communication that they initiate. These are just some of the examples that we shared with staff around the professional learning that could happen on a Friday. We do have a number of these, what are called ParaSharp educational videos, and we use Montgomery County's videos as well. And then we're thinking about a lot of professional learning and training for our classified. I think you've often heard, how do our classified staff who work sometimes with our complex students get the type of training that they need and feel that they're well prepared? Well, we've got this gift of time now where they can actually watch a number of really well-produced videos that explain emotional wellness of children, how to de-escalate a situation, how to understand a productive learning environment. If you're being asked to read with a student, what are some reading strategies? So we've got a long list there that I think our classified staff will appreciate that they have the time now to participate in. And then just a reminder to ourselves that we're in this because there's actually a pandemic going on. And the governor has asked everyone to stay healthy and make that a first priority. So how do you stay healthy and stay well while you're also working from home and feeling this enormous responsibility to meet the needs of a diverse group out in the community? So, let's just keep that one up. So with that, it was just really brief, but what I've sent you, I think will take you some time to read through it. And certainly you can ask me any questions about it. I think part of it is just all of you as board members, our parents, begin to live through the experience with your children. Send us the questions that you experience, the barriers that come forward, the curiosities, how do I navigate this or that? You're an excellent resource for us. And then if you are curious about really looking more at those, seeing examples in those three categories of the typical school day, the teacher-led learning, the supplemental learning, and then meeting nutrition and wellness needs, I can send that to you as well. It really was designed as a toolkit for teachers as they're thinking about the distinction of each of those categories. But if as board members you believe it'd be helpful for you in your communication with patrons, I'd be happy to send that to you. I didn't want to inundate you with a lot of documents leading into this meeting until you felt you had some context for what's out there. So I'll pause there and again answer any questions.
Dr. Ledwig, first of all, just thank you again for everything that you're doing and the late nights as things change. Changes were always made after the school day, and that you were having to respond in the wee hours of the evening. But I did have a question. I know as everything has been discussed in distance learning that it's always, you know, and you reiterated it, it has to be equitable, it has to be equitable. So as I've been doing just a lot of reading on my own with articles that come our way through OSBA and Education Week, I'm just curious, like, what are concrete, I mean, how we are equitable with our ELD students, with our IEP students, with like examples of how we're going to accommodate some of these students that have this special, you know, I know we can't send people out. I'm just curious for, you know, how we're doing that.
Yeah, and before I
question.
Yeah, no, but before I turn it over, I believe, is Jennifer still on the panel?
Yeah.
Before I turn it over to her, I just want to say thank you for asking that question. And that has been paramount for all of us as we've moved into online learning. This situation is different. Usually parents opt in to an online learning program. They join a virtual charter academy, or they decide to homeschool their children and they look at online resources. And they have a lot of control over opting into that type of learning for their child based on what they believe they can do at home to support. And we're in a situation now where parents didn't opt into this. We just placed it right into their laps and said, this is now what you need to do. And not every family feels either equipped with it or knows how to navigate it as maybe some of their other neighbors do, or again are at work and just can't give the type of time. And so a large part through all of this, even with the supplemental learning, a large question for us was, what about children who parents do rely on what's called specially designed instruction with children with special needs, and those who have the expertise to that type of instruction and feedback and coaching that isn't as readily accessible or understood or accessed through a video per se. And so Dr. Spencer Imes has been meeting with those groups of learning specialists often and with the various therapists, and been thinking about, if we do go to distance learning for all, how do we then attend to those types of needs? So I'm going to turn it over to her so she can give us some concrete examples of ways that they're doing that. We're thinking about it.
Well, thanks so much. It has been a quick pivots and shifts in terms of expectations from supplemental learning to distance learning, but the good news is we're all in it together. So there's lots of learning going on with colleagues and with our leaders in Salem. Have really been doing an excellent job trying to provide us with guidance as we all wade into some unknown waters together. And first and foremost, the care for students is at the top of the list. So everything we're doing is trying to emphasize that sort of social emotional well-being and support and care for our families. We have done some work just thinking about, in a distance learning context, as we think of areas of specially designed instruction, what are some of the most high leverage strategies that we would use, say in a brick and mortar school setting, but take the setting out of it? What's really the underlying strategy? And then to think through all of the distance learning types of tools and think about how might we try that in a distance learning context. And so we were able to develop a list of examples of a lot of those to empower our learning specialists when they first came back to work to begin to think about it. And then, as brilliant as they all are, I know that we'll get a lot, they'll take those, small examples and run with them. In some ways, we are better off than many districts because of our emphasis on inclusive practices. So there's already a strong value on the learning specialist co-planning with general education teachers to say, how do we make this learning activity or lesson accessible from lots of different entry points of learners? And so we think about that as a universal design for learning lens, and that's very much something we're living into here. And again, it's not totally new to us because we've been on that work, but it's now just sort of on steroids, or really trying to think deeply. And so I think with that universal lens and the co-planning that's happening, that will meet the needs of many students. For some other students, or some other needs or particular areas of specially designed instruction, we're having to get very creative. We had a Zoom webinar today that we invited staff to attend about using some significantly modified curriculum, but that it's still aligned to standards, and how would we connect with families about that. Also, great partnerships. We're working on sending out a letter to our families tomorrow, of all the families who are served by special education, to sort of explain the processes, but also provide some resources. Columbia Regional Programs has a great set of ways of thinking about learning at home for students who have visual impairments, are on the autism spectrum, hearing impairments, that sort of thing. Another thing that's happening is, Kurt Nelson and his incredible team led that amazing Chromebook checkout system to be done in a safe and supportive and fun way. And most of our children who are accessing technology, who are served by special ed, use Chromebooks, and in fact, those are often the IEP or 504 accommodations, are to make sure they have the access to those Chromebooks and a lot of the tools that will be embedded. But we have some students that's not the technology that they use. They need maybe a touchscreen iPad or an eye gaze device or some other sort of specialized equipment. And so we've been gathering that equipment. We had the last group of that come over today. It's all lined up in my office. So we've been going through a cleaning process there, and we're actually going to be delivering those to the doorsteps of those few families that have that specialized equipment tomorrow. So we are working on all of that, and the guidance from ODE really says that it's going to take partnership with parents to a new level. So we really have to communicate with our families about both the how and also the what. One of our colleagues in Estacada have been at this a little bit longer, a couple more weeks than we have. And so we reached out to them for some guidance around sort of their biggest lessons learned. And their lessons learned after week 1 was streamline things, make sure there's not so much communication coming out to families, try not to overwhelm people, take some small steps and have some success. So we're going to try to learn from that as much as we can, and move forward as we go. And as I said, it's been just exciting to see groups like our speech language pathologists come together and really look for new tools, and then are finding some amazing things there. So that combined with the guidance that Dr. Ludwig said, that we know for some kids we're going to have to do some things in some different and creative ways, but we're excited about it.
A couple more hands up, it looks like.
I was going to say, I know Dylan has a question or two.
Thank you, Dr. Ludwig. That was a very helpful presentation, answered a lot of the questions that I had coming in. The PowerPoint is also very useful. You mentioned something about members of the public or the board can request a copy of it. How do we go about obtaining it? I'd love to have a copy of the PowerPoint.
What we'll do with both of my PowerPoints is usually Ms. Douglas, after the evening, posts them onto BoardBook anyway. And so they can do it that way. But we could also, Mr. Kilstrom is in the room here with me. He'll figure out a way to make them accessible also.
Yeah, we will also share them via board briefs.
Perfect. Okay, that was my only question. Thank you.
And Ginger?
I have one comment, and that actually this kind of expectation about how much time over a week, I saw that in one principal's email was actually helpful. It gave me as a parent some expectations. I think it gives kids expectations. So this is a very helpful PowerPoint, and I'll be glad that the community can access it. Mm-hmm. Question I have is, I've been concerned about our arts and technology students who may be students who don't have the kind of parental support that other students have, or are students in other schools, especially I'm thinking high school level. What are you hearing? What is, are you having any different approaches for that group of high school students?
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Director Fitch. I think tomorrow will help answer a number of questions for high schools overall, and helping think about how students finish strong and finish complete in light of this disruption to their learning. At the same time, when we engage in our high school study, we actually learned a lot from Art Tech High School around how to personalize for students, around how to adjust. They were a large part of the model for us when we thought about online learning. In fact, some of the teachers at Art Tech are going to be the leaders for that, helping us move to this idea of personalized instruction in a way that's been successful for art technology students. How do we generalize that for all of our high schools? So what I'm hearing is, while the academics is important and we'll work through that, I think for their staff, There's an increased attention towards connecting with students and their mental and emotional well-being, making sure that they know that they can make it through the finish line, that they have staff who care about them, how they're doing at home, what kind of support they need, connecting with families. And so that outreach is already happening and will continue to happen. And that staff is very good at it. It's a small school. They excel at that personalized care, and it will continue. And we have a lot to learn from the leadership and the teachers at Art Tech to offer that same type of extended care and attention to our students at our two larger high schools, particularly when you hear tomorrow the plan that's being laid out. It'll make more sense in terms of how we can use some of the model at Art Tech to serve the remainder of the school year at our two larger high schools. Was that cryptic enough for you?
Dr. Ludwig, what time will do they release that information?
Yeah, I don't know. After our meeting, a survey was given out again to superintendents, again, just refining some of what we heard, kind of getting a poll around one of the preferences nested within some of their proposed guidelines, how much of what the state wants to offer to districts for local decision and how much they're going to say this is a directive. And this is what we think is needed for all schools in Oregon. I think there's that balance they're trying to figure out around how much does local autonomy still help in this kind of situation, and how much is it actually a preference of school districts and better for all kids if there's a uniform decision across the state. We do hear often that sometimes a decision we make that works for our kids creates a challenge for a neighboring school district that doesn't have the same resources or ability to maybe respond in the same way, and then sets up, for leaders to have to explain why they've done things differently than West Linn-Wilsonville, for example. We certainly heard it when a small school district in our community in our county had within their contract provision an ability to do distance learning before the rest of us could, because our contracts didn't allow for that. And so we were, why can't you be like Estacada? And, so we get that when things are done differently, and that's fine. That's business as usual too. But in this kind of a situation, the Department of Education is weighing where does local decision-making land still in some of these areas, and where is it more beneficial for all the children of Oregon, where there might be stronger guidelines or directives. And that's I think that's the nuance of a few areas of the proposal that'll come out tomorrow, or the decision that'll come out tomorrow that was still being adjusted even this afternoon.
Dylan, did you have a question? Okay.
Sorry, I'll put my hand down.
Okay, thank you. Ginger, do you? Yeah.
Again, this is more of a comment. I think at the high school level, from my work experience, I know that many people who have drug and alcohol addictions and issues are really struggling during this time because their support networks have crumbled, because that's very much a personal face-to-face option usually. And I would just want the district to consider in the communications to high school parents or high school students that with conjunction with Pam Pierce, perhaps, that we put out there a link to resources for teens who might be struggling with those issues.
Mm-hmm. I appreciate that, Director Fitch, very helpful. And ODE led a big webinar about school counseling and mental health support in this crisis. And I was able to meet with all of our school counselors, and we're revising some different resource lists and revising some of our protocols in this current setting.
I have seen on a number of listservs, particularly from our high schools, but it could have been I saw some on the middle schools, a list of resources reminding students again about phone numbers to call into if they're feeling alone or particularly vulnerable. There's some suicidal ideation or hotlines to call, and just reminding students and families about those resources again. Thank you for that comment.
And just in line with sharing those communications, I know that I have seen those come through, but they go to me as a parent, not necessarily to my student. I mean, I relay to my middle schooler everything that I'm receiving and the videos from his, school and things like that, but I'm his link to that. And so possibly, just being creative about how through the Google Classrooms or whatever you may want to relate and share that information so it's going more directly to students who may need it but don't have the parent there to share it with them.
I'm looking over at our communication director. I think when our high school principals send some of those out, have some been going also directly to students. I do know that when I hear them talk, they say, hey student, and have that as an audience. So some of the communications.
Yeah, communications also go to student email addresses, which we know, especially in high school land, maybe those don't get checked too frequently. So we're constantly looking for creative ways to connect with students, and certainly utilizing Google Classroom will be a way we'll do that in these coming weeks.
And I'd just also add that checking in with students and then having sort of a tiered approach of more frequent check-ins is going to be one of the major roles of our school counselors in this time, as well as sending out proactive lessons and resource lists directly to students.
All right. I'm not seeing anything else. We ready to close out this topic for now?
Oh, sorry. One quick question.
Yeah.
When I look at the bottom of the screen that we have up right now, and it says we can utilize a full summer, we have until August 31st. Is that meaning that we wouldn't hold some sort of official school through August 31st? We just will give seniors the option of completing assignments by that time?
Correct. Thank you for asking that clarification.
Because I'm just thinking my own daughter, I mean, she's decided where she wants to go and she has to be at school August 15th. And so, so I assumed, but I wanted to just clarify.
Yeah. So there are times every year when we say when a student is very close to that 24 credits, it's kind of pending something they need to still get in, and we make a decision as a district to let them still participate in the ceremony because it happened, we got Child Stadium on June 4th. So that's the day we got it. And we just have to push that marker of what does it mean to complete an assignment. It doesn't end on the evening of graduation, that actually students do have all the way through August 31st to be fourth year seniors, that a fifth year senior begins on September 1st. So students who are working in the summer to still complete their graduation requirements are still part of that cohort. And sometimes that's not as well known to our community. It is maybe to the students and the families that it pertains to that year, and they hear that information and they're grateful for that extra time. But we just want to remind our community that it may be that for more students this year than another year, we want to give them the opportunity to slow down, take their time, take as much time as they need, and in order to complete. And that was all the way to August 31st for them to finish up as the class of 2020. I think it'll make more sense tomorrow as well as we get those specifics. And then, certainly I'll do my best to communicate to all of you virtually or in written form what this means. Like there'll be a letter to our community that will follow, to our staff that will follow. So there'll be a series of communications that we're working on.
All right. And with that, right before we close out this meeting, we did reserve, since board members didn't give board reports at the beginning, that if there was anything with regards to information that they learned during this meeting or anything else in general that they would like to share, Then our last item is just for board members to share their thoughts during this very unique and unprecedented time. If you want to do so by raising your hand, then I'll call on you and you can do that. Otherwise, move towards closing out. Chelsea.
It's just a closing comment based on the, really it's the last slide that's still up on our screen. And there's a quote that people don't remember what you say to them, they remember how you made them feel. Is it Eleanor Roosevelt or someone who's credited with that quote? I'm not
Maya Angelou, I believe.
Is it Maya? And I just remember that. I mean, you know, in a year or 2 years or 5 years, this is a distant memory. That will be something that really lingers with people. And so my hope for just all of you administrators who are working on this and the teachers who you work with is that you also have some joy in this process. And I rest assured, I can sleep well at night because I know you're working really diligently and thoughtfully. So as much as, you know, I ask questions or I push in a certain direction or I want a certain outcome, you know, I know you're already 2 steps ahead of those questions and those pushes. So I appreciate that. And I love the Instagram post that one of our administrators put up. It's such a great way to meet students, and I could see the joy coming out in that administrator's, you know, presentation. And watched a video today by a band teacher from Linn-Wilsonville High School who had his students climbing all over him while he was giving the presentation, and they were making tongue faces at the camera. And it's just the nitty gritty and the reality of the situation. And so my hope is just that we keep holding on to that humanity, even as we, you know, also push the academics. So thank you.
Christy.
Yeah, I just, I mean, really, it's just a thankfulness, like Chelsea said too, that I just have the utmost confidence, first of all, in our district office to just take care of our students and our families and to give them the best education and provide for their welfare doing this. So again, I just want to say thank you that it's a privilege to be on a board where I have that sort of confidence, and in a district where I know that everybody is doing their absolute best to care for our students. So thank you. Curtis, thank you for everything. I know that this, with all the IT, and I have just ever since our meeting last week when we voted on the computers, and how you went through and described all of the steps you went through to make sure that we got to 9,800 kids. It just was astounding to me. And that I think you said at the end there were only 200 some that, you know, we hadn't heard back after you had tried, you know, 4 different steps to get to them. And I've actually shared that with people from other districts. It's so impressive to me, the length that you went to make sure that all of our families were reached. And finally, I just want to say to our teachers, just being a teacher myself, and I know Dylan would understand this too. I think back to my first year of teaching, and I thought a lot about quitting because the first year of teaching was so hard because you're inventing everything. And I've been thinking of our teachers a lot as now we've almost kind of thrust them back into a little bit of that first year teaching. Where they're having to come up with new and different ways of delivering their curriculum. And so just to let them know how much I appreciate and acknowledge all of the work that they're doing while being super creative. You know, I love seeing the different things that are coming out, the videos that are being made, and the parade that happened today with the Lowry teachers that, you know, amidst trying to figure out Google Classroom and get distance learning ready, they're making signs and decorating their cars and driving through their students' neighborhoods to make them know that they are missed. I just want to, I just have just a genuine thankfulness for all of you who are continuing to take care of our students and make them feel like they're cared for.
Thank you, Christy.
Thank you very much, Christy.
Dylan?
Yeah, just want to briefly recognize what the district is doing. I know this is so hard with it's basically a moving target with every day. Some new information comes out and some new twist. I think the district's doing a fantastic job with communications. I'm seeing all the emails coming out from not only the district, but also the individual principals who are doing a really good job keeping their students and their families up to date with what's happening. And I also want to thank Curtis and his team for the computers. You know, I picked up my kids' computers on Friday at Willamette, and bringing those computers home and having my second and fourth grader fire them up, they were so excited to have, you know, a sense of normalcy and to be able to communicate, and the opportunity of come starting today of communicating with their teachers and getting back into the school. They were really excited, and so to see that happen was really cool. And to know it's happening 9,800 times around the district is pretty exciting. So thank you, Curtis, and thank you to your team.
Just a quick comment about that. The people that worked those checkouts were happy to do them, but I think they were much happier to actually do them because they interacted with the kids. There were squeals of joy and excitement. There was tears shed. You know, it was a lot of work, but I've told a number of my colleagues in other districts, it might have been one of the most rewarding 2 days of my career, truly.
Yeah. But from a logistical standpoint, it was really efficient. I mean, they were getting those things passed out very quick.
Thank you.
Ginger?
I concur with everything that was said about the district work, but I want to note that both our vice chair and our chair have been spending a lot of time working with our legislators as well as ODE and Dr. Ludwig. And I just want to recognize all the extra time you've put in while you've been dealing with the stress in your family and the virus as well. So thank you for that.
All right, and I always have found myself through this whole process just kind of struggling with the ups and downs and the changes and thinking of our students. And I know all of us here on the board, we do this job because we love education, public education. We love the students. We do it, for free, and we dedicate hours to it because we want what's best for them. And to even attempt public education during a pandemic is a Herculean effort, to say the least, with lots of hurdles like we've discussed tonight with regards to providing students with equitable and an engaging learning experience through distance learning. But at the end of the day, knowing our West Linn-Wilsonville School District, I know our kids are going to be okay. Our educators are suddenly being asked to build this road, and we're walking down that road with them as it's being built at the same time. And there's going to be lots of learning curves and even changes in direction in which the road is going along this way, which we've already experienced. But again, it's just, I know this district, I know we're going to be okay. And I know too, as I say this, we launched our online, or our distance learning, I should say, today. And we know that, they're likely to have a platform crash, or students who weren't able to log in, or even if they could log in, then their interactive link wasn't quite activated, and all those little hurdles along the way. And there's going to be moments that feel like a disaster. But then I know we're all going to be okay. It's going to require us all to have a lot of patience, which our patrons have been demonstrating and our staff has been demonstrating. And I think everyone's approaching it with like a very reasonable and dare say, a lowered expectation of what school and the number of hours required for school might look like. But I just have been so proud of how our community's been able to kind of take a deep breath and relax a little and not cause these little changes and these new initiatives to further add stress to what is already, a global pandemic. So I'm just so amazed by everyone and all their stakeholders. And I know that we'll have hiccups along the way. But then I also think about, we've had this idea around growth mindset and how we've been teaching our kids growth mindset for years now. So they're ready for this. They're ready to, those hiccups, those bumps, those disasters, they know that that's when the real learning is going to start. And so it's also reassuring to know that those tough moments and wherever they falter is just going to make them stronger and better and know that they're ready to go. And that's how I think deep down, I know that at the end of the day, we've done what we could to prepare them even for this unexpected moment, and that they're going to be okay. And then just for our educators, I'm just so incredibly proud of each and every single one of you. I think you're heroes in this time and in this moment of your own right. I would certainly hope that nobody would ever take public education for granted again after we've gone through this. I've seen staff connecting with our students through the Google Classroom, through social media. I've seen them appearing in parades, videos, photo montages, happy birthday drive-bys. We have children celebrating birthdays, but they're stuck at home and their teacher will drive by and wave at them and it makes their day. So I just am so grateful by everybody's efforts to continue to put our students first in both big and small ways. So thank you so much, and thank you for instilling in me this deep known desire and belief that everything is going to be okay.
Thank you, board members. To lead in these kinds of times and to know that you have this board that is giving you the patience to navigate it, is giving you the time to figure it out, trusts in you, believes in you, believes in the staff. And your messages, whether they were through text or emails of support, have just been incredibly appreciated. And I just can't say enough about the team in this executive team and our principals and our teachers and staff. And really, we're doing as well as we are because we just have this phenomenal school community that's rallying. So I would echo your sentiments, and as superintendent, just want to thank you again for your service as board members during this time. And you have so much to navigate on your own, let alone try to lead a school district during this. So thank you, and continue to let me know what you're hearing out there, and so that we can make the adjustments that we need to or send additional communications.
All right, and thank you. And with that, I just want to remind our board members that we did have a joint work session with City of Wilsonville, which we canceled it, but we did save that date of April 20th for a board work session. The content of that is still kind of being developed as new information comes forward and learning that our board has. So I just wanted to flag that for you. And with that, we'll adjourn this meeting. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you, everybody.
Everybody.
Thank you.